Chapter 1990, Returning to the Nine Heavens. Chapter 1990, Returning to the Nine Heavens, teach the cultivation god did it. She stopped the Celestial Emperor's attack. A collective gasp swept through the spectators as they drew in a sharp breath, stunned by the unforeseen turn of events. The moment the divine judgment shattered, the Celestial Emperor recoiled as if struck across the face, a searing pain radiating from it. He staggered, blood spilling from his lips, marking the second time in a single day that he had been wounded, a humiliation nearly as deep as the injury itself. However, the Celestial Emperor swiftly regained his footing and began summoning his celestial chi once more, this time with even greater ferocity, his aura surging like a rising tempest that swept throughout the palace. "Your Majesty!" His subordinates cried out in alarm, their voices trembling with fear. Yet not one of them dared to intervene, paralyzed by the consequences of doing so. Once again, the skies above Dragon's Spiral Mountain quaked, and multiple rifts tore open in unison, splitting the heavens like wounds in the firmament. The cultivation god looked toward the heavens and smiled. "At least your stubbornness rivals your predecessors. The Celestial Emperor is really going to destroy the seventh heaven at this rate." The spectators cried out loud, and some of them began preparing to escape to the other realms. At this moment, several figures appeared around the Celestial Emperor like ghosts, and their voices rang out in unison, sharp and resolute. "Your Majesty, that is enough of your farce. If you refuse to stand down, do not blame us for taking action." "Farce!" The Celestial Emperor turned to face them, his gaze icy and sharp. "Do you truly believe I am acting out of amusement?" Yet, despite the weight of his glare, the members of the Celestial Council stood firm, their expressions calm and unshaken. "Not only did you unleash overwhelming force without warning, but you even struck at the Holy Dragon Clan. The Royal Dragon Clans have been raising hell at our gates since the moment this began. Are you truly trying to provoke war with one of the most powerful beast bloodlines in all the nine heavens?" They exclaimed. "War?" The Celestial Emperor suddenly burst into laughter, his voice echoing with scorn and fury. "Because of your meddling and that cultivation god's interference, the nine heavens are now on the brink of a war far greater than anything you can possibly imagine." The Celestial Council fell into silence, though none among them seemed particularly alarmed. "If such a war truly comes, we will face it then," one of them said calmly. "For now, our priority lies with the rising tensions with the Royal Dragon Clans. A conference has already been arranged. You must attend and make every effort to ease the storm before it breaks. Rumor has it the Great One just emerged from his seclusion, too." Now, it was the Celestial Emperor's turn to fall silent. The 10 Royal Dragon Clans were of little concern to him, but the Great One was another matter entirely. That being alone could unleash more devastation than all 10 clans combined. In time, the Celestial Emperor withdrew his aura, and the rifts torn across the skies above Dragon Spiral Mountain slowly began to mend. As the heavens healed, a hush fell over the land, and the turbulent waters gradually returned to calm. However, the Celestial Emperor had not forgotten the cultivation god. Fixing his gaze upon her that pierced through the realms, he spoke with cold menace. "I do not know who you are, but now that you've revealed yourself and declared your opposition, I will hunt you down like a rabbit in the wild." The cultivation god offered no reply, only a bold, silent smile that spoke louder than words. Before departing, she cast a final glance toward the closing portal linking the seventh heaven and earth, her gaze unreadable yet profound. Elsewhere in the seventh heaven, Dong Yi stood in silence, his expression grave after witnessing it all. "So, she's finally made her move," he murmured, a flicker of unease in his eyes. "What happened to the Holy Dragon Clan and the Dragon's Spiral Mountain?" She merely asked him, her face full of worry. Dong Yi faced her and explained, "They are safe." A cultivation god intervened and stopped the Celestial Emperor. A cultivation god? Why would someone like that defy the Celestial Emperor? Oh, could it be the dragon Ancestor? No, this cultivation god is a human. Is that so? Anyway, does this mean you can take me back to the Holy Dragon clan? Dongyi nodded and said, I can take you back, but we should wait a little longer to make sure it is truly ended. Follow new episodes on the What about Yuan? I can sense two presences within that portal, so he should be returning soon. 2. She merely raised an eyebrow and wondered who that other individual could be. Sure enough, just a few hours after the battle had ended, Yuan and Leah stepped through the portal, arriving moments before it sealed shut behind them. Leah's eyes widened in awe as she took in her surroundings. The spiritual energy in the air was so dense, so pure, that even her ordinary breaths caused her cultivation to surge. It was unlike anything she had ever encountered. Welcome to the Nine Heavens, Yuan said with a gentle smile, watching her wide-eyed wonder, reminiscent of a child discovering the existence of sweets for the very first time. Noticing his looks, Leah frowned, her tone sharp with indignation. Don't you dare treat me like some country bumpkin. However, Yuan remained silent, his smile fading as his expression hardened into a deep, solemn frown. What's wrong? She asked. I knew activating the teleportation device would invite trouble. Yuan murmured, his gaze heavy as it fell upon Dragon's Spiral Mountain. But never did I imagine it would escalate to this extent. Though the mountain still stood, its once majestic form bore the scars of devastation. Broken, battered, yet barely enduring. Let's go. Without another word, Yuan descended toward the mountain, his figure cutting silently through the air. Leah followed close behind. Chapter 1991, Mysterious Cultivation God. Chapter 1991, Mysterious Cultivation God. As Yuan landed upon Dragon's Spiral Mountain, a wave of shock and sorrow washed over him. The mountain was littered with thousands of corpses, many of whom were from the Holy Dragon clan. The rest belonged to human cultivators wearing full armor. Heaven's mandate. Despite this being his first time encountering them, he instantly recognized them purely from their armor and its unique patterns. After all, had plenty of encounters with them in his previous lives. Did a war happen here or something? These corpses look fresh, so it happened only recently, Leah remarked as she hovered slightly above the ground, not wanting to touch the corpses. It was likely the Celestial Emperor's doing. He attacked this place in an attempt to prevent me from returning to the Nine Heavens. Clearly, it didn't work out for him. The Celestial Emperor? Isn't that the guy who sits above everyone in the Nine Heavens? The ruler of the Nine Heavens. Though she was born on Earth, the Lord occasionally taught her about the Nine Heavens. That's right, he confirmed. I'm impressed. How did you end up having beef with the most powerful individual in the Nine Heavens? That's akin to offending the Lord on Earth, she remarked. A bittersweet smile appeared on Yuan's face as he said, It's complicated. Although I have never seen or met this Celestial Emperor, he clearly has a problem with me. Or should I say the past me? Is that so? Leah muttered. Yuan used his divine sense to find the Dragon Emperor and went to find him. Sometime later, Yuan found the Dragon Emperor amidst the wreckage, quietly assisting in the search for fallen members of the clan. Dragon Emperor. The Dragon Emperor, so absorbed in his search that he hadn't even noticed Yuan's return, looked at him with relief in his tired gaze. You made it back safely, Senior. Though he maintained a calm exterior, the Dragon Emperor's appearance told another story. His once majestic robes were torn and stained with blood, and his breath was also somewhat weak. While he had sustained minor injuries during his clash with General Wang, it was his attempt to block the divine judgment that had exacted the greatest toll, wounding not just his body, but his very soul. Can you tell me what happened while I was gone? I know the Heaven's mandate showed up from their corpses. The Dragon Emperor gave a solemn nod before recounting everything to Yuan, from a moment of his departure to the unexpected arrival of an unknown cultivation god who had descended to defy the Celestial Emperor and save the Dragon's Spiral Mountain. While Yuan wasn't particularly surprised to learn that the evil god's army had appeared, he was surprised to hear that the Celestial Emperor had personally intervened and that a mysterious cultivation god had descended to protect them. Who was this cultivation god? He asked. The Holy Dragon Emperor shook his head. I don't know. They were wearing a face veil that blocked their face. However, she had the figure of a woman. Of course, I cannot tell you if that's their real appearance or just a disguise. A woman wearing a face veil. Yuan wondered if he had known any cultivation gods in the past, at least among the memories he had recovered so far. Yet, none came to mind. After all, cultivation gods were virtually non-existent in those ancient days, and his memories were still returning piece by piece with each passing day. The only cultivation god Yuan knew was Dragon Goddess Yeo, the Dragon Ancestor, and the Great One. Even Zixin had only reached the 9th level of God Ascension. However, Dragon Goddess Yeo was with him during the invasion, and the Great One wouldn't do something like hide his identity. Could it be the Dragon Ancestor? No, he wouldn't show up disguised as a woman, either. Maybe it was one of the 9 Divine Supremes? But they wouldn't disappear immediately afterward. Maybe Dongyi knows something. They'll ask him later. In the end, Yuan couldn't recall anyone who matched the description, leading him to wonder if the mysterious figure was someone from a part of his past he had yet to remember. After all, had only recovered most of the evil god, divine paragon, immortal monarch, and exalted blacksmith's memories. By the way, where's she Meili? Yuan asked when he couldn't see her around. You see, the Holy Dragon Emperor began to sweat the moment Shi Meili's name was brought up. I told her to stay out of the battle, but apparently she ignored that and joined the fight anyway. She disappeared somewhere amidst the chaos. I haven't seen her body, so she's likely still alive. Yuan frowned upon hearing this, but if they didn't find her body, she was most likely alive. Since the evil god's shadow army showed up, they likely took her away to protect her. Sure enough, just as he thought that, a familiar voice rang inside his head. My liege, please don't worry about Lady Shi. She's currently with me. Though she had suffered some injuries, they're not life-threatening. Dongyi notified him. Dongyi, where are you right now? He asked. I am currently in hiding with the rest of the Shadow Army. Since we made an appearance with the Celestial Emperor watching, we're likely going to be hunted for a while. By the way, you should leave the Dragon Spiral Mountain as soon as possible while the Celestial Emperor is distracted. I just received the information that he's occupied with the Celestial Council and the 10 Royal Dragon clans. Yuan nodded and said, He'll leave soon. Let Shi Meili know that I have returned, and keep her safe for the time being. Let's meet once things have calmed down. As you command. After his brief conversation with Dongyi, Yuan said to the Holy Dragon Emperor, I really don't know how to thank the Holy Dragon clan for their sacrifice. If there's anything you need, don't hesitate to let me know. Chapter 1992, Departing from the Dragon's Spiral Mountain. Chapter 1992, Departing from the Dragon's Spiral Mountain. Please, don't call us sacrifice. We were merely defending our territory, our home, the Holy Dragon Emperor said solemnly. Yuan's expression turned awkward, guilt flickering in his eyes. Even so, it's a fact that the Celestial Emperor attacked because I activated the teleportation device. You wouldn't have needed to do such a thing if I didn't show up. The Holy Dragon Emperor shook his head and said, Your appearance here, as well as the teleportation device's activation, is Dragon Goddess Yu's will, and as the Holy Dragon Clan, it's our duty to fulfill her will regardless of its cost. I allowed anyone who didn't want to die a chance to leave, but nobody took the offer. That's all I have to say on this matter. Yuan fell silent to ponder. Eventually, he said, Can you gather every member of the Holy Dragon Clan for me as soon as possible? What are you trying to do? The Holy Dragon Emperor raised his eyebrows. You'll find out soon. The Holy Dragon Emperor no longer questioned it and followed his instructions. Shortly after, the remaining members of the Holy Dragon Clan, now reduced to a mere quarter of their former number, gathered before Yuan in solemn silence. Thank you for gathering here on such short notice, and while you're busy. However, I want to do something for you before I leave, said Yuan before retrieving the Dragon God's vengeance. Yeo, can you say something to them? If it weren't for their efforts, I wouldn't have been able to return to the 9 heavens peacefully, he said to it. Did he just? Yeah, I heard it. Besides the Holy Dragon Emperor and some of their top members, Nobody knew about Yuan being the immortal monarch or that Dragon Goddess Yayo was resting inside the Dragon God's vengeance. A soft sigh resounded from the spear before it emitted a profound glow. In the very next moment, Dragon Goddess Yayo appeared before them in her human form. That's even without needing her to introduce herself. The members of the Holy Dragon clan immediately knew her identity. Realizing that they were before the one and only Dragon Goddess Yayo, everyone there kowtowed before her. "Our god, Dragon Goddess Yayo," they all chanted in unison. Ahem. Dragon Goddess Yayo cleared her throat and began to speak in a somewhat stiff tone. "My name is Yayo, and I would like to express my gratitude to the Holy Dragon clan for everything you've done so far, especially for today. Thank you. Though I can only express my gratitude with words right now, once I regain my body, they'll return to give you a proper thank you." "For Dragon Goddess Yayo," they cried, voices trembling as tears streamed down their faces. Unless one had devoted their entire life to a single deity, they could never truly comprehend the depth of emotion surging through the Holy Dragon clan as they stood before Dragon Goddess Yayo, their one and only god, the eternal flame of their faith. Dragon Goddess Yayo spoke no further, choosing to keep her presence brief and solemn. With a single nod of approval, she returned to the Dragon God's vengeance. Yet, what she said was already more than enough to ensure the Holy Dragon clan continued to worship her, perhaps even more intensely than before. "Though it pains me to leave you like this after all that has happened, remaining here any longer will only risk drawing the Celestial Emperor's attention once more," Yuan said solemnly. "So, I'll be taking my leave for now. But if fate permits, I promise I'll return to this place again. Of course, I'll bring Dragon Goddess Yayo with me. We'll await your return no matter how long it takes, Senior Envoy." Yuan smiled, then turned to meet the gaze of the Holy Dragon Emperor, who responded with a silent nod of acknowledgement. "Until next time," Yuan said quietly. And with that, he departed from Dragon Spiral Mountain with Leah quietly following behind. "Where are you going to go, young master?" Feng Liuxiang asked shortly after Yuan left. After a moment of silence, Yuan responded, "I'm going to meet the others." Meanwhile, in a grand hall deep within the ninth heaven, the Celestial Emperor and the Celestial Council sat in solemn audience before representatives of 8 of the 10 royal dragon clans. The only ones who weren't present were the Holy Dragon clan and the Azure Dragon clan. Despite the recent incident, the Mystic Sea Dragon clan still made an appearance. "You'd best have a damn good explanation, Celestial Emperor," one of the representatives snapped, slamming the table with a force that echoed through the hall. "You didn't just trespass into the territory of one of the 10 royal dragon clans. You launched a full assault, one that claimed thousands of lives," another representative roared, his voice laced with outrage. "And not only that," a third representative added sharply, "you attempted to annihilate their entire bloodline with divine judgment, a power reserved solely for condemning the most heinous of criminals on death row." The Celestial Emperor sat beneath a storm of accusations and complaints, the voices of the 10 royal dragon clans rising in fury around him, while the Celestial Council observed in heavy silence, neither defending nor intervening. "I did what had to be done. I hope for your understanding," the Celestial Emperor finally said, his voice calm and measured, as if the barrage of accusations had done little more than stir the air around him. "Don't give us that nonsense. There were countless ways to handle the situation without endangering the Holy Dragon clan. Yet you chose the most brutal and direct path." One of them refuted. "Perhaps so," he replied calmly, "but I was racing against time and did not have the luxury to do things gently. I gave the Holy Dragon clan fair warning, yet they refused to yield. I was left with no other choice. It is regrettable, but I acted as I must to protect the 9 heavens, which is my top priority as the Celestial Emperor. I understand your anger, but if I could rewind time and redo it, I wouldn't have done any differently." Chapter 1993, 10 Royal Dragon Clans. Chapter 1993, 10 Royal Dragon Clans, the audacity, one of the representatives shouted, his voice trembling with fury. Do you truly wish to wage war against the 10 royal dragon clans, Celestial Emperor? The Celestial Council, frowning at the escalating tension, finally stepped in. Let us all take a moment to calm ourselves, one of the council members said firmly. If the 10 royal dragon clans were to truly wage war against His Majesty, the Celestial Emperor, it would result in countless deaths and destruction across the 9 heavens. All this for the Holy Dragon Clan? Another said. Let's be honest. While they may hold a seat among the 10 royal dragon clans, they spend most of their existence secluded within Dragon Spiral Mountain, and they've done little to justify that title. Moreover, their bloodline only rose to the top 3 because of the blessing from Dragon Goddess Yayo, one of the 3 dragons of origin. Your clans, on the other hand, were born with that level of purity. Can their so-called royal bloodline truly be considered authentic? An uneasy silence fell over the royal dragon clans as the Celestial Council cast doubt on the authenticity of the Holy Dragon Clan's bloodline, a heavily debated subject in the past. Since the Holy Dragon Clan had not been born with an Imperial Grey bloodline, but rather received it through the blessing of Dragon Goddess Yayo, the royal dragon clans of the time fiercely debated whether they should be granted a seat among their ranks. In the end, they chose to accept the Holy Dragon Clan, not out of consensus, but out of caution. To reject the clan would have been tantamount to rejecting Dragon Goddess Yayo herself, a risk none were willing to take. However, since their acceptance into the ranks of the royal dragon clans, the Holy Dragon Clan had contributed little, if anything, to the collective. Reclusive and self-focused, they remained within the confines of Dragon Spiral Mountain, showing little interest in the affairs of the other clans. The Celestial Council smiled inwardly after seeing the royal dragon clan's reaction. And just so you're aware, the Celestial Emperor said suddenly, his tone calm, but edged with warning. A war against us would not pit you against my forces alone, but against the Royal Phoenix clans as well. The representative's expressions darkened at once, frowns forming as the weight of those words sank in. Are you threatening us with the Royal Phoenix clans? No, the Celestial Emperor replied, his tone as calm as still water. I'm merely informing you, so that you may choose wisely. Before the royal dragon clans could respond, the Celestial Emperor rose to his feet and spoke coldly. If all you intend to do here is bicker over this matter, then I'll take my leave. I've already given my explanation. Whether you accept it or not is irrelevant to me. I have more important matters to attend to. Celestial Emperor. Angry voices rang out behind him, but the Celestial Emperor paid them no mind, departing without so much as a glance back. His abrupt exit left the Celestial Council in an awkward position. After all, they had aided him by sowing doubt among the royal dragon clans, yet he had discarded that advantage without hesitation. Though the Celestial Emperor had departed, the Celestial Council remained behind to continue the negotiations with the royal dragon clans, stretching on for many hours. After his departure, the Celestial Emperor did not return to the Celestial Palace. Instead, he journeyed to his personal realm. There, a mysterious device displayed a projection of an unknown location within the vast starry void. Within that projection, several indistinct entities could be seen, their forms dormant, yet far from lifeless. Unlike my predecessors, I will not fail you, he murmured, a resolute flame burning in his eyes, unwavering and fierce. Meanwhile, somewhere in the 7th heaven, Kelan gathered Meixiu and the others after learning about what happened at the Dragon Spiral Mountain. All right, listen up. I don't know what kind of trouble your friend, Yuan, has gotten himself into, but there was a huge war between Heaven's Mandate and the Holy Dragon Clan that dwells there. Heaven's Mandate? What's that? Wang Ming asked. They're the Celestial Emperor's private army. The Celestial Emperor? That's right. If I recall correctly, Yuan said something about heading to the Dragon Spiral Mountain, right? Though he was not present, there's no way this is a coincidence. Let me log off real quick and see if Yuan has returned to Earth. Liuxiang suddenly said. I'm going too, said Meixiu. They logged off at the same time. After logging off, Meixiu and Liuxiang removed the device and turned to look beside them. However, Yuan's body, which should have been there, was gone. He's gone, Liuxiang exclaimed. I'm going to speak with the Lord. You go back and inform the others, Meixiu said as she swiftly rose from the bed. Without another word, she stepped onto the balcony and took flight, soaring straight toward the mountain's peak. Liuxiang immediately returned to Cultivation online and explained the situation to the others. What? Yuan's body is gone? So he's back on Earth? Shilang said. Most likely, but I couldn't sense his presence anywhere, Liuxiang responded. Surely, he didn't leave Earth without a word, right? Wang Ming said. Maybe he was tight on time and had to leave immediately, Wang Bingbing commented. That's probably what happened. While the group speculated on the situation, Meixiu met with the Lord. Yes, he came back. The Lord spoke before Meixiu even got the chance to open her mouth. Where is he now? He's already returned to the 9 heavens. The gateway would only stay open for so long, so he had to leave as soon as possible. I see. It's a pity that we missed him, but at least we'll see him soon in the 7th heaven. By the way, your cultivation, I sacrificed it to open the portal. Meixiu was speechless. You don't have to worry about me. He'll be fine. However, things might get rowdy here soon. What do you mean? Meixiu raised an eyebrow. Join privilege for 50 ADV chapters. Only available in the app. Chapter 1994, Super Perfect Physique Tempering Sect. Chapter 1994, Super Perfect Physique Tempering Sect. You weren't there to see it, but it was quite the spectacle. I'm sure governments worldwide are making their way to the Dragon Spiral Mountain as we speak to investigate, the Lord explained. I see. Where's Miss Leah? I'm sure she'll handle it. The Lord showed a bittersweet smile and revealed, Leah followed Yuan back to the 9 heavens. She's no longer with us. What? Meixiu's eyes widened after learning this. Then what should we do? She then asked. Nothing, the Lord calmly responded. The Dragon Spiral Mountain is a unique place. They cannot enter it without my permission. Even if they do, the mountain has multiple powerful formations that can kill even immortals. That said, I lack the spiritual energy to activate them, so we'll be needing your help when that time comes. Meixiu nodded. Sometime later, she returned to and relayed what the Lord told her. What? The manager followed Yuan to the 9 heavens? The others were greatly shocked by this news, since it was the last thing they expected to hear. No, they didn't even think Leah was capable of leaving Earth and the Lord. Did the Lord say anything about Yuan's next plans? Liuxiang asked. Meixiu shook her head. Is that so? I highly doubt he'll be coming here anytime soon, despite already reaching the 7th heaven, especially when he's got the Celestial Emperor's attention, remarked Kelan. I'm fine just knowing that he's reunited with his body and has returned to the 9 heavens. We'll meet eventually, said Jinxi. That's right. It's not like he's forgotten about us or anything. Let's continue our training so we can surprise him the next time we meet. Wang Ming said. Just under a year later, Yuan and Leah finally left the vast sea of dragons and set foot on land once more. I can't believe how massive this world is. How do normal people travel? Leah asked, feeling slightly overwhelmed by the sheer size of the 9 heavens. Teleportation formations, said Yuan. I'm talking about ordinary people, mortals. I doubt they can afford to use them. Oh, if you're talking about mortals, the majority of them tend to stay within their birthplace and rarely travel. The 9 heavens was simply too vast for ordinary people, most of whom couldn't afford the thousands of spirit stones required to use teleportation devices. As a result, they only traveled short distances, while long journeys were a luxury reserved for wealthy families and influential merchants. After arriving at the teleportation device, Yuan gave his destination to the operator. I'd like to travel to the Super Perfect Physique Tempering Sect or whatever is closest. Leah raised her eyebrows at such a terrible name for a sect. Since they have a teleportation device right in front of their sect, I can bring you to their entrance. They'll cost 50,000 spirit stones per person. If you want a cheaper option, there's a city, Without hesitation, Yuan handed 100,000 spirit stones to the operator before he could even finish his sentence. He'll prepare the teleportation device right now. A few moments later, Yuan and Leah stepped through the teleportation device, disappearing from the city and emerging several million miles away. Upon exiting the portal, they found themselves a few dozen meters from a colossal steel gate, nestled between two towering mountains. Yet, these were no ordinary peaks. Their surfaces were not carved from stone, but forged from solid metal. And if one looked closely, the contours and ridges suggested they had been shaped not by nature, but by the force of bare hands. Moreover, the name of the sect, Super Perfect Physique Tempering Sect, was not simply carved, but engraved into the metal through one's fist. Yuan calmly ignored the peculiar name and made his way toward the gate, where a tall, muscular man stood guard. "Welcome to the Super Perfect Physique Tempering Sect. What business do you have with us today?" the disciple asked. Yuan showed the disciple his celestial overlord symbol and said, "I'm here to speak with Kelan." "I understand. Give me a moment to contact the sect leader. By the way, can I have your name?" "Xiaoyang." The disciple retrieved a communication jade slip and relayed a message to his sect elder, who in turn reached out to Kelan. A few minutes later, Yuan could sense a powerful presence flying in their direction with immense speed. Boom! This individual landed right in front of the gates. This disciple greets the sect leader. However, Kelan didn't appear too welcoming. With a frown on his face, he spoke to Yuan using voice transmission. "Are you insane? Why would you come straight here after what happened at Dragon Spiral Mountain? Do you have any idea what kind of trouble you might bring to my sect?" Yuan smiled and responded, "Relax, the Celestial Emperor isn't aware of my identity yet. If he knew my identity, he would have come straight to me. Even if he is aware of my identity, he won't be stupid enough to attack everyone I interact with. I hope." Kelan rubbed his eyes and took a deep breath before speaking. "Come with me. They'll bring you to the others." Yuan and Leah followed Kelan into the sect. As they traveled, Yuan said, "By the way, did you come up with the sect's name?" "Yes. It's very unique, isn't it?" "It's definitely unique in its own way." Yuan smiled. "How are the others?" Kelan touched his nose in a prideful manner and said, "I've personally trained them for the last several years. You'll be surprised by how much they've weighed. You've already reached the peak of immortal ascension. How is that even possible?" Kelan nearly fell out of the sky from shock when he finally noticed Yuan's cultivation. After recovering from his shock, Kelan spoke with an excited smile. "I cannot wait to have a serious spar with you later." Yuan chuckled and said, "Don't be too upset if you lose." Join privilege for 50 ADV chapters. Only available in the app. Chapter 1995, Sparring with Kelan. Chapter 1995, Sparring with Kelan. "By the way, who's that pretty lady?" "Wait, let me guess. She's another lover." "No, she's a friend. I brought her here from my world." Yuan hastily interrupted when he sensed Leah's cold glare from behind. "What? She's from the Forgotten World?" Kelan looked at Leah with interest. "Whyd you bring her to the 9 heavens?" "It's a bit complicated, and it wasn't my decision." "Is that so?" Sometime later, they arrived at the heart of the sect, a domain reserved only for core disciples and sect elders. Kelan continued a little further until they reached a restricted area accessible only to the sect leader, meaning only he could enter. However, when they arrived, Yuan could see several figures already waiting for their arrival. "I notified them on our way here," Kelan said as he descended to the ground. "Yuan, manager." Liuxiang and the others greeted them with bright expressions. "Hey, everyone." Yuan tried to greet back, but he was interrupted when Liuxiang pounced at him, giving him a tight embrace. "I've missed you. I missed you too." Liuxiang didn't hog Yuan all to herself and released him a few seconds later so Meixiu could do the same. "Yuan." Meixiu wasted no time and entered his embrace. "Sorry, I couldn't see any of you when I returned to Earth," Yuan said to the others a few moments later. "I had to rush back as soon as possible." "We figured that was the case," Wang Ming said. How long has it been since then? 5 years? Around that, I guess. I haven't kept track. Yuan admitted. I doubt any of us kept track, either. We're always so busy. Yuan looked at their cultivation and smiled. I see you've all reached the divine realm. Congratulations. In just a few years, everyone increased their cultivation to divine king, with Jinxi even reaching divine ancestor. What cultivation have you reached? I cannot sense it. Lang asked. 9th level immortal ascension, he calmly replied. So you're already half a step into becoming an immortal? At this rate, you'll be a true immortal by the next time we see you, Wang Bingbing remarked. Let's chat inside, Kelan said as he opened the doors to his pavilion. Once everyone was seated inside, Yuan recalled his experience over the last several years, from meeting the Holy Dragon Clan to visiting the Azure Dragon Clan. To think you'd met with not 1, 2, but 3 of the 10 Royal Dragon Clans in such a short time. You know, most people go their entire lives without even meeting one of them, right? Kelan remarked. I guess my fate is quite strong when it comes to dragons, he shrugged. What are your plans now? Liuxiang asked. Yuan didn't immediately respond. After some pondering, he spoke. There's so many things to do that I don't know where to begin. Since it's been a while, I'm thinking about staying here to spend some time with the rest of you while I figure out my next plan. That sounds like a great plan, Liuxiang immediately said. You don't mind, right? Yuan looked at Kelan. I don't mind as long as you don't cause any trouble. Yuan smiled and said, the others won't even know I'm here. Wang Xiaoying suddenly asked, Hey, where's she Meili? I thought she was with you. Oh, we had to split temporarily. She'll come here soon. Some time later, after finishing their conversation, Yuan and the others followed Kelan to a nearby building so they could finally spar. At a glance, the building looked unremarkable, barely larger than a standard warehouse. Yet, the moment they stepped inside, the world around them shifted, and they found themselves in a boundless white space that seemed to stretch into eternity. We can fight to our heart's content on here without needing to worry about damages, Kelan said. Do you need some rest before we start? No, I can spar right now. Then to keep things fair, I'll suppress my cultivation to match yours, Kelan continued. Yuan offered no response, simply nodding in silence. Kelan blinked in mild surprise before chuckling. I was certain you'd say something like, no need to hold back, or challenge me to go all out. Yuan smiled faintly. It's easier to just show you. A gleam of excitement flashed across Kelan's face. Without hesitation, he shrugged off his outer robes, revealing the training garb beneath, minimal and fitted, covering only his lower body. Whenever you're ready, he said. Then, Yuan gave a quick stretch of his arms before launching himself toward Kelan, not a trace of aura leaking from his body, relying solely on his physical strength. A clash of physiques first, huh? Just what I was hoping for. Kelan laughed heartily as he charged to meet him. Well, the moment their bodies collided, Kellan's expression twisted in disbelief. It felt as though he had slammed into an immovable mountain, and before he could even process what had happened, his body was hurled through the air, like a man struck head-on by a truck. Wang Ming and the others could hardly believe what they had just witnessed. After years of training alongside Kelan, they were well aware of how formidable his physique was. In fact, not once had they seen him overpowered in terms of raw strength until now. After the unexpected blow, Kelan quickly picked himself up. Yet rather than frustration, his face lit up with unrestrained excitement. I couldn't really tell before, because your body was mostly made of your soul, he said, eyes gleaming. But that physique, could it be the legendary golden immortal physique? Yuan gave a simple nod. That's right. Ha ha ha. Kelan burst into laughter, his voice echoing through the boundless space. Unbelievable. I'm actually clashing with a legendary golden immortal physique. This is a dream come true. Yuan then said calmly, if you truly want to experience the golden immortal physique, you'll have to try a lot harder. Because his avatar had been composed mostly of his soul, it had barely allowed the golden immortal physique to reveal even a fraction of its true power. But now that Yuan had reclaimed his physical body, The full might of the legendary Physique could finally shine without restraint. Join Privilege for 50 ADV chapters. Only available in the app. Chapter 1996, Sparring with Kelan, 2. Chapter 1996, Sparring with Kelan, 2. This is my first time fighting in my true body, so give me everything you've got, Yuan said as he beckoned Kelan. Then don't mind if I do. Kelan unleashed his cultivation, but he still kept it suppressed to the peak of immortal ascension. Here I come. With a roar of excitement, Kelan charged forward, his fists surging with immense energy. However, Yuan didn't so much as lift a finger to defend. He stood firm, like an immovable mountain, taking every one of Kelan's strikes head-on with nothing but his bare body. This is rather relaxing. You might have a future as a master, Yuan said calmly, a faint smile on his lips. He stood unbothered, as though Kelan's blows were nothing despite each strike sending ripples through the air and making the very space around them tremble. I refuse to believe I can't break through your defenses, Kelan roared, his aura flaring violently as it shifted. Without hesitation, he began unleashing powerful martial techniques. He's already using his 99 divine fist technique, Shi Lang exclaimed, a shiver running down his spine as memories flooded back. Vivid flashes of being beaten to a pulp by that very technique. The technique comprised a total of 99 strikes, each one building in power and ferocity, much like Yuan's own 9 supreme swords. 55th Divine Fist, Kelan bellowed as his fist crashed forward, the air trembling from the force. Yet, even after unleashing more than half of the technique, he felt no closer to breaching Yuan's defenses. It was like striking a mountain of metal with a brittle wooden branch. 99th Divine Fist. Even after the final strike landed, Yuan wasn't pushed back even slightly. With a faintly provocative smile, Yuan turned slightly and pointed to his back. Why don't you give the back some attention, too? He said, as if inviting a massage rather than an attack. Kelan's eyebrow twitched, a flicker of irritation crossing his face as his pride took a hit. With a slightly cold edge to his voice, he muttered, "You asked for this." Suddenly, his suppressed cultivation surged, breaking through to the bronze immortal level. Now wreathed in swirling immortal chi, Kelan launched a renewed assault on Yuan. 22nd Divine Fist. 75th Divine Fist. After going through another 99 strikes, Kelan distanced himself from Yuan before staring at him with wide eyes that flickered with disbelief. It's like he doesn't even feel my attacks. How is that possible? Knowing full well that Yuan possessed powerful regenerative abilities, Kelan didn't hold back and poured every ounce of immortal chi he could muster as a bronze immortal into his attacks. Yet, despite his full strength, the outcome was the same as before, utterly ineffective. Moreover, Yuan was still relying solely on his bare body to endure the onslaught. This meant no techniques and no defenses, just sheer physique. At this point, it was no exaggeration to say that he could withstand a full-powered assault from a bronze immortal in his sleep, and quite possibly sleep through it. That wasn't bad, but it would have been better if you'd used a little more strength. How about increasing your cultivation to true immortal? Yuan suddenly said. True immortal? You know this is just a spar, right? Kelan said. And you know you won't even be able to give me a warm-up with this level of sparring, right? Yuan responded. What happened to wanting to experience the golden immortal physique? You're barely seeing the tip of its prowess right now. After a moment of silence, Kelan took a deep breath and spoke in a serious tone. Don't blame me for whatever happens next. Kelan increased his cultivation to silver immortal, then golden immortal, finally stopping at true immortal. Yuan smiled and said, That's more like it. Here I come. After giving Yuan a brief moment to ready himself, Kelan sprang into motion, soaring toward him with fists infused with immortal chi and just a trace of celestial chi. Despite this, Yuan remained still. Boom! A split second later, Yuan's body was sent hurtling into the distance from the force of the blow. However, he swiftly regained control mid-air and landed gracefully on his feet, completely unharmed. The strike had possessed just enough power to send him flying, but it was still far from enough to break his defenses. Seriously? Kelan stared at Yuan, utterly dumbfounded. He had always assumed the legends surrounding the golden immortal physique were exaggerated. But after facing it firsthand, Kelan could say without the slightest doubt, if anything, the legends underplayed its true prowess. So, what do you think? Yuan asked as he calmly walked toward Kelan. Satisfied yet? Kelan offered a nervous smile, sweat beading at his brow. I thought it'd be fun, but honestly, it was more terrifying than I expected. Yuan let out a light chuckle. Then what if I told you that my body still isn't fully merged with my soul? What? Kelan blurted out, his eyes widening in disbelief. Yuan nodded calmly. It's been nearly a year since I reclaimed my true body. I thought that would be enough to fully adapt, but so far, I've only managed about 50%. You're telling me that you've only shown me about 50% of your true prowess? Kelan exclaimed. HM? No, I haven't even begun to show you anything yet. I'm strictly talking about my physique. If we're talking about my prowess, Yuan abruptly stopped speaking, and in the next moment, unleashed his cultivation and immortal chi in a sudden surge, its sheer force nearly knocking Kelan off his feet. Heavens, what is that amount of immortal chi? I have met many true immortals, but none of them can come close to having that much immortal chi. Kelan exclaimed. While my cultivation has fully merged and my physique is about halfway there, my bloodline and the rest of my talents have only just begun to merge. Honestly, I have no clue how powerful I will become once my true body and soul fully merge. Yuan calmly shrugged, leaving Kelan and the others speechless. Join privilege for 50 ADV chapters, only available in the app. Chapter 1997, Sparring with Kelan 3. Chapter 1997, Sparring with Kelan 3. Fuck, I have never met or heard of anyone that's even close to being as monstrous as you. Kelan muttered after learning that Yuan was barely showing all of his potential, but was still able to make a true immortal feel helpless while only being immortal. You know, you should join. No, I'll tell you about it later. Kelan proceeded to take a deep breath before increasing his cultivation even further, stepping into the first level of God Ascension. Well, do you think you'll be able to handle the God Ascension realm? He asked Yuan with a provocative smile. We won't know until we try, said Yuan. Then here I come. Kelan made the first move, and the two of them clashed shortly later. However, despite being in the God Ascension realm, Kelan didn't use celestial chi to directly attack Yuan, only using it to strengthen his own physique. Yet, even with the power of celestial chi, Kelan only found himself on par with Yuan, who was still only using his physique. Why don't we fight seriously now? You can use your full cultivation, and he'll do the same, Yuan suggested after thousands of exchanges. Don't blame me if anything goes wrong. Kelan responded as he unleashed his full cultivation at the 5th level of God Ascension realm. Yuan also no longer held back, and his body surged with immortal chi. Yuan activated God of War's astral arts, perfectly controlling the avatar's size to be just slightly bigger than his own frame. Since Kelan fought with his fists, Yuan decided not to use a weapon and continued fighting with his bare hands. When they clashed again, the sheer force of their blows fractured the very space around them, sending cracks rippling through the air, though the rifts swiftly mended themselves. Ha ha ha! Kelan roared with exhilaration as he traded blows with Yuan, his eyes flickering with delight. This is it. This is the kind of manly fight I've been craving. Kelan was primarily a body refiner, having honed his physique to the extreme. Few cultivators could rival him in sheer physical prowess, making battles like the one he now faced with Yuan exceedingly rare. And even when such encounters did occur, they never left him satisfied, as his opponents would fall too quickly to offer any true challenge. I never imagined I'd experience a battle like this with a mortal. You're truly something else, Yuan. At this rate, I might really lose myself and try to kill you. Yuan smiled at his words and said, Kill me? I'd like to see you try. Yuan and Kelan's battle raged on for nearly an entire month without pause. In the final days, Kelan unleashed everything he had, fighting with the intent to kill. Yet no matter how hard he pushed, the most he could achieve was tearing off a few limbs, wounds that Yuan quickly recovered from. In the end, Kelan lay sprawled on the ground, his chest rising and falling with exhaustion as he stared blankly at the endless white, his expression dazed, caught between disbelief and awe. Yuan sat on the ground, his entire body soaked in sweat. However, his breathing was calm, and his body was still surging with strength. While Kelan looked as if he had sprinted through a marathon, Yuan, by contrast, appeared as though he had merely taken a leisurely jog around the park. Does the golden immortal physique give you unlimited stamina as well? Kelan suddenly asked. No, that's something else. Something else. Just how many secrets are contained within that small body of yours? Who knows? Yuan replied with a casual shrug. It might have come off as evasive, but in truth, he genuinely didn't have the answer. Are you two finally done? Wang Ming called out as he and the others approached. None of them had left during the month-long battle. They had remained there from start to finish, eyes fixed on every clash and exchange. And just from observing, each of them had gained insight, advancing their understanding and even strengthening their own cultivation in the process. Sorry, I didn't intend on taking up so much of your time, Kelan said to Yuan. He shook his head and said, No, it's fine. I needed time to adjust to my new condition, too. You'll be staying at the Sect, right? They'll prepare a place for you. No need. I can just live with Meixiu or Lulu. He turned to them and continued. Are you okay with that? Of course. In fact, I was going to make that suggestion. Liuxiang said. Meixiu nodded in agreement. Okay. Just as Kelan stood up and prepared to leave, Yuan suddenly stopped him. Wait a minute. What is it? Don't reject this. Yuan tapped his forehead, drawing forth a glowing orb of light. With a casual flick of his finger, almost as if launching a flicked booger, he sent the orb sailing through the air, striking Kelan squarely between the brows. Kelan trusted Yuan and didn't resist the surge of information flooding into his mind. This is, he cried out, his voice trembling with shock, as if he had just seen a ghost. His expression twisted with disbelief, eyes wide and filled with utter astonishment. Yuan smiled and said, Don't worry, it's real. Consider it a gift for taking care of my friend for the last few years. After taking a moment to process the information Yuan had shared with him, Kelan suddenly dropped to his knees and kowtowed without hesitation. Please, he said with deep reverence, allow me to call you father. What the heck? Lang and the others stared with wide eyes, wondering what Yuan had given Kelan for him to act like this. Rejected. Yuan calmly refused. Then how about young master? No, I don't want to hear that from you. Just continue treating me normally. As you command, Kelan shouted before jumping to his feet. He turned to look at Meixiu and the others and said, You'll be entering seclusion for a bit. You could train yourselves in the meantime, or take a break. You all deserve it. Then, like an overjoyed child with a new toy, he skipped away, grinning from ear to ear. Chapter 1998, A Week with Meixiu. Chapter 1998. A week with Meixiu. Once Kelan left the sparring grounds, Yuan said, We will have plenty of time to catch up, so I'm going to take some time to rest for now. Who are you going to stay with? Liuxiang asked. Me or Meixiu? He quickly replied, I was going to take turns, so I would stay with one of you for a week, then switch and repeat. That sounds good. Liuxiang nodded. She turned to look at Meixiu and continued. To make things fair, let's rock, paper, scissors with our eyes closed. No divine sense, either. Meixiu nodded and closed her eyes. Rock, paper, scissors. They opened their eyes to check the results. Ugh, looks like you win this one. Liuxiang sighed. Feng Yuxiang, Lan Yingying, and Yingzi decided to leave Yuan's Dantian for some fresh air and to allow Yuan some privacy. As for Yuning, she simply sealed her senses and went to slumber like usual. I'm going to take a look around the sect with the other two, said Feng Yuxiang. Try not to cause any trouble, Yuan said. Feng Yuxiang chuckled. We're not you, young master. Sometime later, Yuan followed Meixiu back to her living quarters. He'll go take a shower first, Yuan said as he approached the bathroom. Wait, Meixiu suddenly stopped him. Since it's been a while, let's go together. In response, Yuan silently nodded with a smile on his face, and the two of them entered the bathroom together. Inside, Meixiu helped Yuan wash his body like in the old times, but instead of just using her hands, she used her entire body. Over the past few years, she had devoted herself not only to cultivation, but also to tempering her physique, refining it until it neared perfection. Her body, though strong enough to deflect ordinary weapons with ease, retained a softness that was almost unreal. Her skin was also as smooth as silk, gliding effortlessly across Yuan's body with a delicate, irresistible grace. A few minutes later, Meixiu washed the soap off their body. Yuan, unable to restrain herself any longer, Meixiu closed the distance between them and pressed her lips to his in a passionate, heartfelt kiss. Though she had planned to wait until they returned to the bedroom, the longing that had simmered in her heart for years could no longer be contained, overflowing with unrestrained desire. Yuan also didn't realize how much he missed her presence and touch until they were alone. Soon, their bodies intertwined in an intense cultivation session, and Meixiu's blissful voice filled the bathroom. Several hours later, they emerged from the bathroom, still unclothed, and made their way to the bedroom, where they continued to make up for the time they had long been apart, their bond deepening with every passing moment. After nearly a week of uninterrupted intimacy, the two of them lay side by side in silence, their eyes fixed on the ceiling. How's your mother, Meifeng, doing nowadays? Yuan eventually asked. She's spending more time in the Nine Heavens since there's not much for her to do on Earth nowadays. She even started a business as a merchant. A merchant? Yuan raised an eyebrow at this unexpected news. Yes, Meixiu said. She started in the lower heavens, gradually building her influence as she ascended through each realm. Now, she's in the fourth heaven, and from what I've heard, she's become quite renowned. I see. Hopefully she's not mad at me for not being around lately. Of course not. She misses you a lot and would always ask me about you whenever we encounter each other. Oh, we visit the myriad of techniques once every 2 months to catch up with each other. Yuro and the others are also there. Yuro, how is she? Yuan asked, an air of melancholy surrounding him. She probably misses you the most out of all of us. And she? Meixiu suddenly paused, almost as if contemplating whether to continue. Nothing's happened to her, right? Yuan sat up on the bed with a worried frown on his face. Meixiu let out a quiet sigh before continuing. Honestly, I haven't seen a genuine smile from her in a long time. Whenever she does smile, it always feels forced. At first, we thought someone might be causing her trouble. But according to her close friends, Xia Jingyi and Bai Lianhua, there's no such person. The real reason she's been acting that way is because she misses you. Upon hearing those words, Yuan suddenly realized just how much he had been neglecting Yuro, something that had quietly begun the moment he first stepped into cultivation online and had only deepened with time. Yuan let out a heavy sigh as he covered his face with his arm. To have caused Yuro so much pain. I've failed her as a brother. But this is mostly because of the Celestial Emperors. No, Yuan interrupted firmly. I can't blame the Celestial Emperor. While he may be the reason I haven't been able to return to Earth these past few years, I started neglecting Yuro long before that. This is on me, entirely. Meixiu became silent, and an awkward silence filled the room. When's the next meeting? Yuan then asked. Our last meeting was a month and 2 weeks ago, so we'll be meeting again in 2 weeks. All right. In the meantime, I need to think of a way to make it up to her. Early on the next day, Yuan washed up before leaving Meixiu's living quarters to head to Liuxiang's place, which was only a few steps away. When he arrived at her doorstep, Yuan gave a gentle knock. Almost instantly, the door swung open. Welcome, darling. Liuxiang greeted him with a playful smile, dressed in a strikingly provocative outfit that left little to the imagination. Before Yuan could even utter a word, Liuxiang seized his arm and pulled him inside, pressing her lips to his in a deep, eager kiss the moment the door closed behind them. Chapter 1999, A Week with Liuxiang. Chapter 1999, A Week with Liuxiang. Relax, I won't be going anywhere for the next week, Yuan said with a smile after their kiss. Liuxiang then dragged him to the bedroom. I've been preparing for this moment, she said. Prepare? Yuan asked with raised eyebrows. Liuxiang nodded and retrieved several manuals from her spatial ring and proudly displayed them to him. Those are... Yuan's eyes widened with surprise when he read the titles on these techniques manuals. Liuxiang chuckled when she saw Yuan's expression. That's right, dual cultivation techniques, she proudly declared. During her spare time, Shed studied these dual cultivation techniques to prepare for Yuan's return. I haven't had the opportunity to test it out yet, so it might not be as good. However, he'll use this time to perfect them. Without waiting any time, Liuxiang began testing out her newly acquired techniques on Yuan, letting him experience a new world that even his incarnations had never experienced. A week later, Yuan and Liuxiang lay beside each other on the bed, their bodies soaked in sweat and other wet substances. So, what do you think? She asked. Yuan smiled and said, It's hard to explain, but if I had to describe it with one word, it'd be otherworldly. Liuxiang chuckled and said, It was a little awkward and embarrassing at first, but I'm glad I didn't stop and continued. I was worried that I might have wasted my time learning these techniques, too. Yuan then said, Dual cultivation techniques, huh? I should learn a few. Did you get them from a myriad of techniques? Yes, there's a whole section just for them. Their conversation eventually drifted to family. Have you visited your family since what happened? Yuan asked. Yes, I visit them once a year now to have dinner. Liuxiang said. After a brief pause, she continued. Have you heard about Yuro from Meixiu yet? She told me. I'm still trying to think a way to make amends for being a bad brother, he sighed. You're not a bad brother. Sometime later, Liuxiang asked, What are you going to do now? I'll spend the next week with the others, then meet up with Yuro at the myriad of techniques. All right. The following day, Yuan went to seek out the others, starting with Wang Ming. Hey, want to have a spar? I want your opinion on my current standing, Wang Ming said after catching up on some things. Yuan agreed, and the two of them sparred for the next 3 hours. Naturally, Wang Ming lost. So how much have I improved? Compared to when we first fought? It's incomparable, said Yuan. You've worked hard. Thanks, Wang Ming said with a somewhat bashful reaction. Take this. Yuan repeated what he did to Kelan, transferring some information directly inside Wang Ming's mind. These are... Wang Ming's eyes widened after realizing what Yuan had just given him. 9 supreme swords and a limitless sword domain. They're ancient sword techniques from the primordial era, Yuan explained after giving him the sword techniques Head acquired at Han Zexian's tomb. I don't know what to say, Wang Ming muttered in a dazed voice. You don't need to say anything. Thank you, Wang Ming bowed, feeling overwhelming with joy. Yuan left Wang Ming to meet with Lang next. Just like Wang Ming, Lang asked Yuan for a spar after catching up, and Yuan obliged. After their spar, Yuan shared some of the evil god's spear techniques with Lang. Though they were not as powerful as the sword techniques had given Wang Ming, they were powerful in their own right. After Lang, Yuan continued to visit the members of the Demon Sealing faction, and he would give them all martial techniques that suited their fighting style. How's Dr. Wang these days? Yuan asked Wang Xiuying. He's getting old, but because he started cultivating, his health and energy have never been better, she chuckled. You know, he asked me about you often. Yuan smiled and said, It's a pity I haven't been able to see him for a long time now. The next time I visit Earth, I'll definitely give him a visit. Sometime later, Yuan retrieved a glass vial that contained a pill inside and offered it to Wang Xiuying. I don't really have anything alchemy-related besides this Tier 8 pill I acquired from the Azure Dragon clan. Take it. Wow, are you sure? Wang Xiuying stared at the blue and green pill with excitement. This was her first time seeing a Tier 8 pill, much less having one. I gave the others martial techniques, but I won't be able to give you any techniques. Wang Xiuying shook her head and said, I don't need any techniques. As an alchemist, I only need to refine my flames and improve my knowledge, and I have acquired enough information from the myriad of techniques to last me many years. By the time Yuan visited almost everyone in the Demon Sealing faction, a week had passed, and it was time to visit Uro and the others at the myriad of techniques. However, most members of the Demon Sealing faction chose to stay behind, claiming they wished to study the techniques Yuan had shared with them. Of course, that was merely a convenient excuse. In truth, they didn't want to intrude on his time with Uro and quietly decided to give him space. In the end, only Meixiu and Liuxiang followed Yuan to the myriad of techniques. There's actually a myriad of techniques located within the sect, Liuxiang revealed as they left together. Liuxiang and Meixiu led Yuan to the outer court, where disciples moved about, tending to their own affairs. Nearly all of them, regardless of gender, possessed impressively muscular builds. Who's that with the untouchable fairies? The disciples quickly took notice of Yuan's group, though it was Meixiu and Liuxiang who drew the most attention. Their reputation within the sect had soared to incredible heights thanks to their unique status and the fact that they were personally trained by none other than Kelan, the sect leader himself. Join privilege for 50 ADV chapters, only available in the app. Chapter 2000, Grown Up. Chapter 2000, Grown Up. Look at Fairy Chu. She has her arms linked around that man. The disciples quickly took notice of the intimate atmosphere around the two, which greatly shocked them. Liuxiang and the other ladies within the Demon Sealing faction had earned a reputation for themselves throughout the year for being unobtainable, because even core disciples were shot down without any hesitation. Is that why she's rejected everyone who approached her? Because she's already taken? That's the only logical explanation. It's a pity, but I can see why she chose that man. He has this hard-to-describe, natural charm about him. Yuan found himself constantly being stared at by the disciples until they reached the myriad of techniques. Wow, so this is what it looks like in the seventh heaven, Yuan muttered in surprise as they stepped inside. Unlike the compact, space-saving libraries of the lower heavens, the myriad of techniques here resembled a grand, traditional archive with vast halls stretching in every direction, towering shelves, and an abundance of open space. The place was so vast that Yuan couldn't even see the other walls, only the one behind them near the entrance. It was as if the space extended endlessly in all directions. Impressive, right? We were also quite shocked when we first came here. Liuxiang smiled. Yuan nodded and glanced around. The first thing he noticed was that most of the people present weren't disciples of the super-perfect physique tempering sect. Some wore the robes of other sects, while others had no uniform at all, suggesting they were independent cultivators or unaffiliated visitors. This suggested that regardless of which myriad of techniques one entered in the seventh heaven, they all led to the same vast, interconnected space. Despite being filled with thousands of cultivators, the place was incredibly silent, with the only noise being the sound of pages being flipped. Since most of the cultivators there flew around when they traveled, the place lacked even the sound of footsteps. Sometime later, they arrived before a guarded teleportation device. Welcome back, Lady Meixiu and Lady Chu. The guard greeted them with respect before turning to look at Yuan and asking, Will he be accompanying you today? Meixiu nodded and said, He doesn't have a medallion, but he's very close friends with Senior Bai. Oh, I have Senior Bai's medallion, if that's what you mean. Yuan showed the guard the medallion. The guard subconsciously straightened his back before bowing to Yuan. Welcome, esteemed guest. The guard then activated the teleportation device. Once Yuan and the others entered the device, they were teleported directly to a familiar place, Senior Bai's world. When does Uro and the others usually show up? Yuan asked. They should show up in an hour. We came here early because we wanted to surprise Uro, said Meixiu. With that said, you should hide until they arrive. Liuxiang added. Yuan nodded and completely erased his presence, dumbfounding them. Wow. Even though I'm staring right at you, I cannot sense your presence. Is this what it feels like to hallucinate? Liuxiang remarked. Yuan smiled and said, "Want to learn it? I have given the others martial techniques, but I haven't given the two of you anything yet. It's a technique that hides your presence." Liuxiang and Meixiu nodded. Thus, Yuan transferred the shadow veil to them. "This is a celestial rank technique," they exclaimed after learning of its rarity. "Are you sure we can actually learn this?" Meixiu asked, swallowing nervously. This would be their very first celestial rank technique. Yuan smiled and responded, "That's a silly thing to ask. Of course, you can learn it. No matter how precious this technique is, it'd be useless if it could not be learned. Also, this will help you guys in case you encounter some trouble. Once we return to the Sect, I plan to share even more techniques with all of you," Yuan said, his tone solemn. "What happened at Dragon Spiral Mountain reminded me. Just being connected to me can put you in danger. I want to make sure you're prepared." Yuan went into hiding shortly after to wait for Yu Rou and the others' arrival. 3 hours later, several new presences appeared in Senior Bay's world. "Sorry we're late. We ran into some trouble on our way here." A beautiful woman with white hair spoke as she entered the place. It was Bai Lianhua, and following behind her were 2 women who were just as beautiful. "Trouble? Are you guys okay?" "Yes. Just the usual womanizers trying to hit on us," Bai Lianhua said with a sigh, her tone a mix of irritation and resignation. "HM, is it just the 2 of you today? What happened to the others?" Jinxi asked when she could only see Meixiu and Liuxiang. Liuxiang smiled and said, "Yes, it's just us today. The others are busy with some new techniques." "How have you been, Yu Rou?" Meixiu asked softly, her gaze resting on the tall, graceful woman quietly standing beside Jinxi. "The same as usual, but we're preparing to head to the 4th heaven," said Yu Rou, who had matured into a graceful, poised woman over the past few years, her presence now marked by a calm, naturally aloof aura that set her apart. However, there was a faint weariness in her face, subtle, but telling, like someone who hadn't been sleeping well for some time. Hanging by her hips was a beautiful fan. However, if one looked closely, it was only a spirit-grade treasure. Have you found out anything about my brother?" Yu Rou proceeded to ask, her voice laced with worry. It was always the first question she asked whenever they met, ever since Shed learned that Yuan had returned to Earth and reclaimed his body. Meixiu and Liuxiang remained silent. Seeing this, Yu Rou lowered her head in a dejected manner and sighed. "The same as usual, huh?" However, as she lowered her head, she suddenly caught sight of a pair of legs standing just behind her, startling her so much that she jumped in surprise. "Who the hell?" Yu Rou spun around sharply, but the rest of her words froze in her throat the moment her eyes met the familiar, handsome face standing behind her. Though Yuan had also matured and grown even more handsome over the years, Yu Rou would have recognized his face anywhere. "Brother," she whispered, her voice quivering as her eyes grew moist. Yuan greeted with an apologetic smile. "It's been a while, Yu Rou. Happy 2000th chapter. Join privilege for 50 ADV chapters. Only available in the app." Chapter 2001. Yu Rou's True Feelings. Chapter 2001. Yu Rou's True Feelings, brother. Unable to contain herself, Yu Rou subconsciously threw herself into his arms, wrapping him in a tight embrace, years of longing and emotion pouring into that single, desperate gesture. "Why Yuan?" Bai Lianhua exclaimed in a shocked tone, her eyes wide with surprise. Jinxi swallowed nervously, her face slightly red after seeing Yuan's handsome face. "I'm sorry it took this long to see you guys again," Yuan said as he caressed Yu Rou's back, who was only a head shorter than him now. Yu Rou didn't respond. She simply held him tighter, burying her face into his robes, as if afraid he might vanish if she let go. "You were unable to log off for several years, right? How is your body right now?" Bai Lianhua asked, since it seemed like Yu Rou wasn't going to speak. "My body is fine. If I weren't a cultivator, it would have been dangerous. So that is your real body, correct? Correct, he confirmed. Does this mean we won't be able to see you on Earth again? Bai Lianhua continued to ask. For now, but it's not like I cannot return to Earth ever again. Unfortunately, I don't know when that will happen. It could take years, if not decades, before I get to return safely. Yu Rao's body trembled at such words. Yuan noticed this and looked down, but he wasn't sure what to say. Yu Rao suddenly lifted her face from his chest and looked at him with tears flowing down her face. Brother, what if I want to come to the 9 heavens? She asked. Yuan became speechless. While he was certain the Celestial Emperor would do everything in his power to prevent him from returning to the 9 heavens if he visited Earth, he wasn't sure how the Celestial Emperor would respond to others attempting to enter the 9 heavens. After a moment of silence, Yuan finally spoke. That's not a decision you make on a whim. Choosing this path means giving up the life you've known. It's not something to take lightly. I know that, she shouted. After a brief pause, she continued softly. When you first left home with Meixiu, I realized just how much I hated being apart from you. Every day felt like a small ache. But I endured it, because back then, I could still see you often enough. But after you moved to Dragon Spiral Mountain, and I joined the Eternal Lotuses, we've barely seen each other at all. Then you couldn't log out of, and now it's been over half a decade since we last saw each other. Her voice trembled as she continued. I can't do this anymore, brother. It's become too much for me to bear. You're the only family member I have left. Yuan didn't know what to say. He shifted his gaze to the others, who shook their heads in silence. After a moment of silence, Yuan sighed and said, If that's what you really want, I won't stop you. However, it's going to take some time to open the gateway between our worlds again, so you'll have to wait until then. In the meantime, they'll try to visit you as much as possible. Yu Rao nodded. Okay, she mumbled. Once Yu Rao had calmed down, they gathered around a table, and Yuan began recounting his experiences over the past few years, sharing the long and winding journey that had kept them apart. However, aside from Yu Rao, the others struggled to focus, still caught up in the weight of her earlier outburst. None of them had noticed her pain before, since she had always carried herself with quiet strength, acting composed and independent. Even Meixiu, who had always been the closest to Yu Rao, had failed to see the loneliness hiding behind her calm demeanor. It wasn't until recently, when Yu Rao had finally stopped pretending, that Meixiu began to see her pain. Once Yuan finished recounting his journey, Yu Rao and the others began recalling theirs. Bai Lianhua would spend most of her time and effort growing her faction both on Earth and in the 9 heavens, while Xia Jingyi focused on improving her zither techniques, even joining a music sect for 3 years. As for Yu Rao, cultivation had become her only escape from the loneliness she carried. She immersed herself in it for most of her days, using it as a shield against the emptiness, hence why her cultivation had surpassed even Bai Lianhua, being at the 7th level of Spirit Lord. On occasion, she took on monster extermination quests, not for merit or recognition, but simply to vent the emotions she kept buried inside. Brother, it's been a while since you last saw Snowy, right? Do you even remember her? Oh, that tiger cub from back then? I remember. He nodded. She's grown a lot since then, and she even saved my life many times. Come out, Snowy, Yu Rao suddenly called. In the next moment, a towering figure emerged from Yu Rao's Dantian and appeared at her side. No longer the small, adorable cub from years past, Snowy had grown into a majestic white tiger, massive in size and with a fierce and commanding presence. Wow, you've really grown. Surprisingly, Snowy's cultivation was at the peak of Spirit King, an entire realm stronger than her own master. However, the moment Snowy laid eyes on Yuan, she instinctively shrank back, her massive form trembling ever so slightly, an involuntary reaction born of instinctual reverence. Snowy, there's no need to be afraid. This is my brother. Don't you remember? Yu Rao was quite surprised by Snowy's reaction. In fact, she had never seen Snowy acting nervous before, much less afraid. Seeing this, Yuan smiled and said, She must be reacting to my bloodline. He suddenly retrieved a glass vial that contained his blood and offered it to Yu Rao. Feed her this. Italel help her grow. This is blood. Yuro looked at the vial with interest and confusion, wondering why Yuan wanted her to feed snowy blood. Join privilege for 50 ADV chapters. Only available in the app. Chapter 2002, Snowy's Transformation. Chapter 2002, Snowy's Transformation. Is this blood from a magical beast or something? Yuro asked as she uncorked the vial. A distinct scent immediately filled the air, one perceptible only to beasts. Snowy's ears perked up, and her eyes widened with excitement, her instincts awakened by the unmistakable aroma. Like a beast in heat, Snowy pounced onto Yuro, who quickly shouted, "Ah, you're going to make me drop it." However, Snowy didn't move away. Instead, she leaned in even closer, her tongue poking out eagerly as she pressed her head toward the vial, like someone desperately trying to catch a single drop of water in the desert. Okay, I get it. Here," Yuro said in a flustered tone as she quickly poured the blood onto Snowy's outstretched tongue. The moment the blood touched her taste buds, Snowy's entire body quivered with delight, her pupils dilating as a surge of satisfaction rushed through her. In the very next moment, Snowy let out a thunderous roar as her aura exploded outward, wild and untamed, shaking the air around her. Meanwhile, notifications began appearing before Yuro. Snowy's bloodline is transforming. Yuro exclaimed after seeing these notifications. What? Really? Bai Lianhua and Xia Jingyi were just as surprised to hear this. What was that blood you fed her? Yuro turned to look at Yuan for answers. Yuan smiled and said, "It's my blood." Huh? Yuro and the others stared at him with wide eyes, seemingly unable to comprehend it. My bloodline is quite unique and has the ability to evolve a beast bloodline. It's not guaranteed, but it has a higher chance of working on those with a weaker bloodline. What an incredible ability. As expected of my brother, Yuro murmured with quiet admiration. She then glanced at Snowy, who had suddenly crouched down, her massive form curling slightly, as if she had suddenly drifted off to sleep. "She'll be fine. Just give her some time to evolve her bloodline," Yuan explained. Yuro nodded. Sometime later, Yuro spoke in a faint, dispirited voice. "Brother, are you going to leave again soon?" "No. They'll be staying at the super perfect physique tempering sect for some time to let my body finish merging some more." Yu's expression immediately brightened, and she asked, "Then, can I spend more time with you?" "Of course," he nodded. They continued chatting for almost an entire day until Bai Lianhua said, "It was very nice seeing you again, Yuan. I'd like to stay here for longer, but I have a lot of work to do at the faction. Let's meet again soon." "See you later." Xia Jingyi spoke in a timid voice. "Before you go, let me give you something." Yuan transferred several techniques to them, bestowing cultivation and martial arts methods to Bai Lianhua, while entrusting Xia Jingyi with a collection of profound zither techniques. These are ancient and mythic rank techniques. Bai Lianhua exclaimed in shock after realizing what Yuan had given her. Xia Jingyi was too shocked to even say anything. "No need to thank me. Just consider it a gift for taking care of my sister when I couldn't," Yuan said. "You can leave without me." "They'll stay here for a little longer," Yuro said. "Okay." Once Bai Lianhua and Xia Jingyi left, Meixiu and Liuxiang also left a little bit later, leaving Yuan and Yuro alone. "How long are you going to stay?" Yuro asked him. "They'll stay here until you want to leave," he said. "Are you sure? Don't you have a lot of things to do?" "Yes, but they can wait for now." "In that case, they'll stay here as long as possible." Over the next several days, Yuro and Yuan spent their time reminiscing about their childhood. Yuan would often play the zither for her, guide her through her cultivation, and pass down several techniques to help her grow stronger. Time passed quickly, and before they realized, they'd spent almost an entire month inside Senior Bay's world. "They'll leave tomorrow," Yuro said. Although she wanted to spend more time with Yuan, she knew that she couldn't keep him there forever. "Okay." Later that night, "Brother, can I sleep with you tonight?" Yuro knocked on his door and asked. "You're not a child anymore, you know." "So what?" I still want to snuggle with you like we used to. Him coming in. Inside his room, Yuan was seated on the floor. You're cultivating? Now that I've reached immortal ascension, I don't need to sleep anymore, Yuan explained. In fact, I feel far more rested through cultivation than I would from sleeping. Since this is going to be my last day with you, sleep with me. She pulled him off the floor and dragged him to the bed. You may have grown up, but you're still a bit spoiled, aren't you? Yuan said with a warm smile. Yuro didn't reply, but a quiet smile spread across her face. A few quiet minutes passed as they lay side by side on the bed. Then in a soft voice, Yuro whispered, Brother, what is it? When do you think we'll be able to travel to the 9 heavens? Hard to say. After all, we need someone who can activate the teleportation device on Earth. But the Lord has already sacrificed his cultivation to open it. He continued, Even if you make it to the 9 heavens, what will you do then? I want to go where you go, she immediately said. That's too dangerous. There's no way I can bring you to the places I'll be going. I don't need to be exactly by your side. I just want to be near enough so you can visit more conveniently. But you can do that already through the myriad of techniques. It doesn't feel the same. She sighed. I want to be with you physically, not in this avatar. Eventually, Yuro drifted into a deep, peaceful sleep, the kind she hadn't experienced in years. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc. Chapter 2003, Meeting Li Jinxi. Chapter 2003, Meeting Li Jinxi. The following morning, Yuro slowly opened her eyes. Brother, she whispered, a warm smile blossoming on her face as she gazed at Yuan, peacefully asleep beside her. A sudden impulse stirred within her, and after a brief moment of hesitation, she leaned in and pressed a soft, gentle kiss on his lips. Yuan opened his eyes a few moments later. Good morning, brother. Yuro acted normally, but her face was flushed with redness. Morning. Yuan sat up, pretending like he didn't notice the kiss. They'll make breakfast, Yuro said as she got off the bed and left the room. After she left, Yuan released a deep sigh. With his experience, there was no way he hadn't noticed it. Yuro's feelings for him went beyond simple sibling affection. While it might appear as familial love on the surface, he could clearly sense the deeper emotions she tried to hide. Even if they weren't blood-related, they had grown up together as siblings, and that bond carried weight. Yuan wasn't sure how he would respond if Yuro ever chose to confess her feelings. Would he be able to accept her, or would that line between them remain one he couldn't cross? Sometime later, after eating breakfast, they made their way to the exit. Brother, do you think I'll be able to see you again soon? She asked. He nodded and said, They'll try to meet you again before I return to my journey. Okay, it's a promise. Yuro suddenly embraced him tightly. Take this before you go. Yuan retrieved a spatial ring and offered it to her. What's this? She asked. There are a few treasures inside that will help you if you ever get yourself into trouble that you cannot handle. Thank you. Once Yuro left, Yuan also left the myriad of techniques and returned to the super-perfect physique tempering sect. Wow, I didn't think you'd spend an entire month with Yuro, Liuxiang remarked when he returned. A month is nothing if you consider how long we've been apart, he said. That's true. What are you going to do now? Meixiu asked. He'll stay at this sect for a little longer. Also, there's still someone I need to talk to. Oh, you mean Jinxi? Liuxiang said. He nodded and said, She's definitely waiting for me. Good luck, Meixiu said. Yuan left to find Li Jinxi shortly afterward. After asking around, he made his way to the training grounds, but not the one reserved exclusively for the sect leader. Instead, he headed to the grounds designated for sect elders, where Li Jinxi was known to train. She often sparred with the elders, as none of the regular disciples were strong enough to challenge her. When he arrived, Li Jinxi was in the middle of a sparring match with a sect elder who was at the bronze immortal stage while only being at the peak of divine Ancestor herself. Moreover, though faint, Li Jinxi was unmistakably using immortal qi. No matter how many times I witness it, it still amazes me how she can wield immortal qi at her current cultivation level. She's a true prodigy. I heard she had just stepped into the divine realm when she joined the sect around 5 years ago. If she had arrived a few years earlier, she might already be an immortal by now. Her combat experience is frighteningly high for someone her age. I heard she's not even 100 years old, yet she fights like someone who's lived through millennia of battle. Yuan could hear the murmurs of the sect elders watching from the sidelines, their voices laced with awe and deep respect for Li Jinxi's talent and rapid rise. Eventually, the sparring ended in a draw. As amazing as always, Lady G. The sect elder clasped his hands together and gave her a polite bow. Thank you for your time. Jinxi returned the bow. No, the pleasure is mine. It's an honor to exchange swords with a genius like you. By the way, my grandson, who's a core disciple here, asked me to. The sect elder abruptly stopped mid-sentence, his gaze shifting as he noticed Li Jinxi had turned her head, her attention clearly fixed elsewhere. Everyone quickly noticed her sudden distraction and turned to see what had caught her attention, only to find an unfamiliar, strikingly handsome man standing there, someone none of them recognized. I didn't think you'd actually come see me, Li Jinxi suddenly said. Why wouldn't I? You visited everyone but me, and that was a month ago. I was going to visit you sooner, but I ended up staying with you Ro for longer than anticipated. Relax, I'm aware. I was just joking with you. Yuan was speechless. Li Jinxi wasn't the type to joke around. How much has she changed since we last met? He wondered inwardly. Do you remember our arrangements? Li Jinxi suddenly asked. Of course. We'll take you on any time. Then meet me at the place you sparred with Senior Kelan a month ago tomorrow, she said before flying away. Yuan could only stand there with a dazed look on his face. Excuse me, but who are you? One of the sect elders suddenly asked, snapping him out of his daze. I'm just a guest. After saying that, Yuan activated Shadow Veil and disappeared before them like a ghost. The following day, Yuan made his way to the White Space training ground. Not seeing Li Jinxi outside, he decided to head inside to check if she was already there. Sure enough, once inside, he could see Li Jinxi standing not far away with the Golden Empress already in her grasp. Before we begin, I want to make one thing clear. Fight me with everything you have from the very start, Li Jinxi said calmly, her gaze locked with Yuan's. If you hold back or look down on me, I won't forgive you. Yuan gave a silent nod in response, his expression unreadable. Join privilege for 50 ADV chapters, only available in the app. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc. Chapter 2004, Li Jinxi's True Feelings. Chapter 2004, Li Jinxi's True Feelings. Come at me whenever you're ready, Li Jinxi said as she unleashed her full cultivation and as much immortal chi as she could muster without going out of control. However, despite her seemingly confident expression, Li Jinxi already knew that she wouldn't be able to defeat Yuan, who could fight on par with God Ascension cultivators. In response, Yuan retrieved number 1 under heaven and activated God of War's astral arts from the get-go. Here I come, Yuan warned her before speeding toward her. Li Jinxi raised her sword high and swung with all her might, unleashing a powerful technique that made the very air around them tremble with its force. Yet with a single, effortless motion, Yuan swung his sword, shattering her technique completely, as though it were no more than a breeze before a storm. Li Jinxi gritted her teeth and unleashed one technique after another in rapid succession, each strike fueled by relentless determination. But Yuan didn't even bother to defend. He continued to approach her, allowing every attack to land directly on his body, unflinching, as if her efforts couldn't even reach him. Damn it! Li Jinxi roared as she unleashed her strongest technique. Golden Empress Absolute Decree. Suddenly, a golden energy surged around the Golden Empress in Li Jinxi's grasp, radiating a powerful pressure that rippled through the air. Had she unleashed this technique during her spar with the sect elder the day before, there was no doubt she would have claimed victory with ease. However, Li Jinxi didn't stop there and infused the energy with immortal chi and enhanced sword aura. Seeing this, Yuan tightened his grip on his sword, his eyes narrowing as he prepared to meet her strike head-on. In the next moment, Yuan swung his sword, channeling immortal chi through the blade and layering it with enhanced sword aura. A split second later, their swords collided, unleashing a shockwave so powerful it sent ripples through the air and carved fractures into the very fabric of space around them. Jinxi had expected to hold her ground for at least a few seconds, but the instant their swords collided, the overwhelming force behind Yuan's strike shattered her balance. Before she could react, her body was hurled through the air, utterly powerless to resist. Jinxi coughed up a mouthful of blood, her body trembling as she struggled to rise to her feet. So I couldn't even withstand a single strike from him, huh? Jinxi let out a quiet breath and stopped trying to stand. Instead, she remained on the ground, her gaze drifting upward as she stared into the endless white space, her expression dazed. Seeing this, Yuan withdrew his sword and approached her. "Are you okay?" he asked gently. "No, I'm not," she replied without hesitation. "No matter how hard I try, no matter how much effort I put in, I still can't seem to catch up to you." "Why are you so hung up on catching up? It's not like I will leave you behind or anything," Yuan said. "In fact, you're soaring when compared to the others." She glared at him and said, "How else am I supposed to get you to accept me?" "What?" Yuan raised his eyebrows, puzzled by her words. "If it isn't obvious by now, I have regained my memories as Jinxi," she said. "And with them came everything she carried, such as her experiences and her feelings for you. I'm well aware of that. But those memories belong to your previous life." "So what?" she snapped, her voice trembling with frustration. "Are you saying I should just cast aside everything I felt and experienced back then? Even if that life ended and we've been reborn, we're still the same soul, still the same people." She took a breath, her eyes locked onto his. "What about Meixiu and Liuxiang? You accepted them in this life. So why can't you accept me?" Yuan let out a quiet sigh and said, "While it's true that my feelings for them have strengthened after regaining my memories, I've known and loved them long before my memories returned. Their feelings for me, they were already there even before they began recalling anything from their past lives." He paused for a moment, his gaze steady as he continued. "But you..." He stopped there, not because he didn't want to continue, but because he couldn't. Yuan didn't know Jinxi's feelings well enough to say more. When they had first met, she had seemed like nothing more than a battle fanatic. Their relationship had never felt like anything deeper than companionship, similar to how he viewed the other members of the Demon Sealing faction, though perhaps just slightly more. If Jinxi's feelings for him had only awakened after regaining Jinxi's memories, then to Yuan, it felt less like love born naturally, and more like something inherited, even forced, and he wasn't sure how to respond to it. Jinxi quickly understood what he was trying to say. "So you think I only feel this way because of my past life?" she asked, her voice tight with emotion. She clenched her fists before shouting, "That's not true. I've had these feelings for you long before my memories as Jinxi returned. I've never been good with words or expressing my feelings." Her voice softened, and her face flushed with redness as she continued. "Yes, Jinxi's memories helped me understand my emotions better, and they strengthened what I already felt, but don't think for a second that I didn't already love you before then." Jinxi's mind drifted back to their first encounter on the stage at the Jaded Garden. At the time, she hadn't recognized it for what it was, but she eventually realized that she had started falling for him in the middle of that very battle. And that feeling would only continue to grow as they continued to spar and spend more time with each other. Unfortunately, fighting was the only thing she excelled at. To others, it may have seemed like she viewed Yuan as nothing more than a rival, someone to challenge and chase. But in truth, it had always been more than that, and she just never knew how to show it. Chapter 2005, A New Addition to the Family. Chapter 2005, A New Addition to the Family. After listening to Jinxi's confession, Yuan smiled and said, am flattered you feel that way about me, but I wasn't doubting your feelings. He continued, after all, even though I have reincarnated many times, the feelings my incarnations experienced and their emotions are still mine, but not everyone will think like me. I just wanted to make sure that was what you really wanted. I'm certain that's what I want, she responded with a serious face. I see. So, Jinxi sat up and stared at him intently, clearly waiting for his response. Yuan extended his hands toward her and smiled. I was unable to answer Jean's eyes feelings because I lacked the courage before, and I lost her before I could. This time, however, I will not make the same mistake. Jinxi gently took his hand, her voice barely above a whisper. Does that mean, before she could finish, Yuan pulled her to her feet and straight into his arms? Without a word, he leaned in and pressed a soft, tender kiss to her lips. Jinxi's eyes widened with surprise, but she quickly closed her eyes to enjoy the moment. Ah, so this is what it feels like to be finally accepted. Jean she had spent thousands of years chasing after Tian Xen, only to meet a lonely, unfulfilled end. So one could only imagine the fulfillment Jinxi, who had her experience and emotions, was feeling at this moment. Let's go back to my place, Jinxi said afterward. She wanted to embrace him on the spot, but she was afraid that someone else might enter the training ground and witness it. Yuan nodded, and the two of them left the training ground the next moment. Once they arrived at her living quarters, Jinxi brought Yuan directly to the bedroom, where she immediately removed her robes, revealing her defined and flawlessly toned body. What do you think? She asked, her face flushed with redness. It's beautiful. Yuan smiled before kissing her all over her body. Once Yuan was finished, Jinxi swapped roles and began licking all of his body. Many moments later, Yuan inserted his sword into her scabbard, connecting their bodies together. The room soon echoed with Jinxi's blissful cries, a sound so pure and unrestrained, unlike anything she had ever made before. Time slipped by unnoticed as they lost themselves in waves of pleasure, the outside world forgotten. Before they realized it, days had passed. Though it was her first experience, Jinxi's monstrous endurance allowed her to cultivate with him for days without rest. It's a pity that my first experience is through my avatar. Jinxi sighed. Does it really matter? It feels no different from your real body, Yuan commented. No, there is a difference. Yuan couldn't refute her words. Once a cultivator reached a certain level, the subtle flaws in an avatar became apparent. Though it might feel identical to a real body at first, there were nuanced differences. After all, no matter how powerful a formation might be, it was impossible to perfectly replicate one's physical body using only the soul. What are you going to do now? Jinxi asked him. He'll continue to stay here until I have a solid plan. I see. By the way, Jinxi paused, a hint of nervousness creeping into her voice. Which of us is going to tell Meixiu and Liuxiang about this? Caught up in a moment, she had completely forgotten that Yuan already had 2 official partners. And now, she had crossed that line with him, without ever speaking to them first. Yuan smiled and said, We can do it together. Do you think they'll be angry? She asked. It's not impossible, but it's unlikely, since they're just like you. Jinxi felt slightly better and silently nodded, but she wasn't completely relieved. Sometime later, Yuan and Jinxi met up with Meixiu and Liuxiang. This might be sudden, but I've decided to accept Jinxi into the family, Yuan said, getting straight to the point without hesitation. Liuxiang and Meixiu didn't respond immediately. Instead, they turned to face each other and exchanged silent glances, their expressions unreadable. Sorry, I know I should have come to you two first for permission, but just as Jinxi opened her mouth to speak, Liuxiang smiled and said, Why do you need our permission? It's not like we own him. If he accepted you, then that's that. Meixiu nodded and added, We have long accepted the fact that he'll add more people into the family. Honestly, I'm a little surprised it took this long. Liuxiang chuckled and continued, Right? I was expecting you to join the family long ago. Jinxi was speechless. She never thought they'd be so calm and accepting. However, now that she thought about it, the two of them wouldn't have been able to coexist with each other if they couldn't accept Yuan having multiple partners. Anyway, welcome to the family, Jinxi, Meixiu said. Thank you. Jinxi didn't know what else to say. So, who else do you plan on adding to the family? Liuxiang turned to look at Yuan. He responded with a weird smile. Don't make it sound like I have a list of potential partners. I don't have anything planned. Considering how many lives you've lived, I wouldn't be surprised if we have a few more additions to the family soon, she chuckled. After chatting for a while, Jinxi and Liuxiang eventually returned to their own living quarters, leaving Yuan to spend the week with Meixiu. The following week, he devoted his time to Liuxiang, and then to Jinxi the week after. In the blink of an eye, 2 months had passed. It was once again time to visit Uro and the others at the Myriad of Techniques. However, upon their arrival, an unexpected figure appeared. Yuan, you're back. It was none other than Senior Bai. Chapter 2006, Faceless Sword Emperor. Chapter 2006, Faceless Sword Emperor. It's been a while, Senior Bai. Yuan greeted him with a warm smile. Indeed, it has been a while. Last I heard from you, you were still in the 6th heaven. Where are you right now? Senior Bai asked. I'm currently in the 7th heaven, and I've been staying at Kelan's Sect for the last several months, he said. What? Senior Bai frowned after hearing this. You've been at Kelan's place for several months already? How come I didn't hear anything about this from him? Oh, he went into seclusion shortly after I showed up. Senior Bai rubbed his eyes and sighed. That meathead. He should have at least notified me about your return before he went into seclusion. Yuan chuckled before asking, How have you been? Same as usual, but I've been spending more time at my sect, he said. Your sect? That will be the gates of heaven, correct? Yuan recalled participating in a trial that required him to fight a disciple from this sect. Yes, that's correct. Whenever you have the time, you should visit. There's one within the 7th heaven, as well. As well? There's more than one gates of heaven? Liuxiang asked. Senior Bai nodded and explained, I have 3 sects, one in the 5th heaven, the 7th heaven, and the 9th heaven. Of course, they all share the same name and are essentially the same sect. What is the purpose of having 3 sects? Bai Lianhua asked out of curiosity. It's quite pointless to have multiple sects if you place them all in the same realm. However, if you spread them apart, you'll be able to gain many more disciples. Also, it gives those in the lower heavens another method of ascending. I see, Bai Lianhua muttered, as she had been contemplating branching out her faction recently. Senior Bai turned to look at Yuan and continued. The next Sword Emperor qualifications will be happening soon, and ITLL take place within the gates of heaven. You use the sword, right? You might learn a thing or two if you go. Sword Emperor qualifications? What is that? Jinxi asked, her curiosity piqued. Senior Bai then explained. In the world of sword masters, the highest attainable title is the Sword Emperor, much like how blacksmiths have the title God of Creation and alchemists have the God of Alchemy. The Sword Emperor is, in essence, the God of Swords. However, there can be multiple Sword Emperors. The Sword Emperor qualification is exactly what it sounds like. An event where sword masters compete for the chance to earn the title of Sword Emperor. Sword Emperor, Yuan muttered. Jinxi glanced over at Yuan. In Jin's eyes, memories. Tian Xan also acquired the title of Sword Emperor. In fact, he was the strongest Sword Emperor in history. How does one join this event? Yuan suddenly asked. Senior Bai smiled and said, Are you looking to join? Unfortunately, even with your talents, it'd be impossible for you to join in your current state. Only those who have achieved Supreme Sword Aura may join. After all, Supreme Sword Aura, huh? Indeed, I can't use that right now. However, if I have enough time. Yuan showed a confident smile. When is the event happening? It's going to happen in 7 years. 7 years? Yuan raised his eyebrows. I thought you said it'd be soon. That's quite far away. 7 years is nothing for immortals like me. I guess that's true. Anyway, 7 years should be more than enough for me to master Supreme Sword Aura. Yuan said casually. Senior stared at him, utterly dumbfounded. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. Most cultivators spent their entire lives unable to even grasp enhanced sword aura, let alone supreme sword aura. And the participants in the Sword Emperor qualification, nearly all of them would be God Ascension realm experts who had lived for tens of thousands of years. Well, if you're truly serious about mastering supreme sword aura, Senior said thoughtfully, then you should visit the Holy Sword Temple. It's a unique place that exists beyond the bounds of the Nine Heavens, and nearly every sword emperor throughout history has gone there to learn their supreme sword aura. In fact, the strongest sword emperor in history, the Faceless Sword Emperor, also trained there. Faceless Sword Emperor. Yuan raised his eyebrows at this title. Senior mistook Yuan's reaction as intrigue and explained, the Faceless Sword Emperor earned his title because he always wore a mask and almost nobody knew his true identity. He had other titles such as the Undefeated Sword Emperor and the Mystical Sword Emperor. He's one of the most revered figures in the world of swordmasters. Jinxi couldn't help but smile after hearing this. The Faceless Sword Emperor was, without doubt, Tian Xin. Senior continued. No one knows where the Faceless Sword Emperor came from. Only that from the very beginning of his recorded history, he lived as an undefeated prodigy. However, just as mysterious as his rise was his disappearance. After attaining the title of Sword Emperor, he vanished without a trace, almost as if he had never existed at all. He lifted his head to look at the clear blue sky and sighed. To tell you the truth, I've encountered him once. However, he was just passing by, and I was only a snooty little brat back then. Though I was immortal, I could tell how formidable he was at a glance. He was a true monster, one that might rival even you, Yuan. Yuan smiled and said, all right, I've decided. He'll visit the Holy Sword Temple next. Of course, it wasn't solely because he wanted to participate in the Sword Emperor qualifications. If he wanted to fight and kill God Ascension realm cultivators, he'd need to learn supreme sword aura eventually. I should have mentioned this first, but not just anyone can enter the Holy Sword Temple. You'll need a referral and then pass a test before you can train there, Senior suddenly said. Chapter 2007, The Great One's Appearance. Chapter 2007, The Great One's Appearance Referral? From whom? Yuan asked. Only sword emperors and reputable sword masters are allowed to give out referrals. Fortunately, we have someone in the faction who can give you a referral. He'll contact them after this. Okay, what about the test? Oh, it's quite simple. Your enhanced sword aura just needs to be powerful enough to damage the sword wall at the Holy Sword Temple. I see. Should be doable. By the way, what is your cultivation at right? Senior stopped his sentence midway when Yuan exuded some of his cultivation, as had been suppressing it. Peak of immortal ascension. Senior almost couldn't believe his eyes. The last time they met, Yuan was still in the spirit realm. His cultivation increased by an entire major realm in less than a decade. At this rate, he'll become an immortal by our next meeting. Is my cultivation not enough? Yuan asked. No, there shouldn't be any problems as long as you can use enhanced sword aura. Yuan nodded. Then there's no problem. He showed off his enhanced sword aura, which had reached its maximum mastery long ago. Even in the ninth heaven, only a handful of prodigies have ever managed to attain enhanced sword aura before reaching the immortal realm, Senior said, swallowing nervously. But none of them could hold a candle to your level. That's only natural, Liuxiang remarked in a prideful tone, acting like she was the one being praised. By the way, about what happened at the Dragon Spiral Mount. Senior suddenly brought up the topic, his tone more serious now. It was an incident witnessed by the celestial overlords, after all. Are you okay? Do you know why the Heaven's Mandate and the Celestial Emperor showed up, even causing such a major scene? Though Yuan trusted Senior deeply enough to entrust his life to him, he chose not to reveal everything. He didn't want to drag him into such a dangerous matter, especially with the Celestial Overlord situation. I don't know why, but I think the Celestial Emperor doesn't want me in the 9 heavens, he said while shaking his head. Senior Bai became silent. He was aware of the Celestial Emperor's curse, and while he never figured out why the Celestial Emperor would target Yuan, he knew there was something between them. If you ever find yourself in a situation that you cannot handle alone, don't hesitate to rely on us, on the Celestial Overlords. Regardless of your rank, you're still one of us, so as long as you didn't commit any crimes, we'll back you with our full power. Senior Bai could tell that Yuan wasn't revealing everything, but he didn't press. He trusted Yuan, and believed that when the time was right, he would share the truth on his own terms. Yuan offered a grateful smile and said, "I'll keep that in mind. Thank you. Anyway, I won't intrude on your time any longer. I'll leave now to speak with that individual who will give you a referral." With that, Senior Bai left shortly after. "Looks like you'll be busy again soon, brother." Yuro sighed. Senior Bai didn't mention how long it'll take for him to get that referral, so I might still have some time left to spend with you, he said. Not wanting to waste any time, they began chatting with each other, talking about their recent experiences and future plans. Eventually, everyone but Yuro and Yuan left. The siblings spent the next week with each other like their last meeting. "If I don't show up for the next meeting, that means I have already left. Don't worry, it'll be okay. Even if it'll be a little lonely," Yuro said softly as she embraced him. "Now that you've regained your body, the thing I worried about most is finally behind us." Meanwhile, after he left, Senior Bai reported to Su Jiechi about Yuan's return and Kelan's blunder. "I see. So he's regained his true body and traveled to the 9 heavens with it." Su Jiechi muttered to herself after hearing the report, a sense of relief washing over her. "By the way, did you ask him about what happened at the Dragon Spiral Mountain?" she suddenly asked. "Yes, but he didn't say much. However, he's definitely hiding something, though." Su Jiechi sighed. "It's fine. He probably doesn't want to cause us any trouble. My father was also like that. He'd always try to solve everything on his own. Now, then, about the Holy Sword Temple. I'll contact that person myself," she continued. Senior Bai smiled and said, "That's relieving to hear. I don't want to deal with that eccentric person." "I know," she calmly remarked. Sometime later, after finishing her current work, Su Jiechi left to find this eccentric person to give Yuan the referral. Meanwhile, at the Azure Dragon clan, just as peace had become the norm, an unfathomable presence suddenly descended out of nowhere, blanketing their entire territory in a suffocating pressure. Upon sensing the overwhelming presence, everyone in the city froze in terror. Not a single soul dared to move, let alone glance around in search of the source, as immense fear gripped their hearts. Zhao Zhanhai and the others immediately stopped their cultivation and rushed out of their residences, moving toward the source of the presence, which was rapidly closing in on them. However, despite the audacity with which this individual had unleashed their presence across the Azure Dragon clan's territory, not a single member felt offended, nor did they approach with anger. Instead, they felt a deep sense of humility, as if standing in the presence of something far beyond themselves. Moments later, Zhao Zhanhai and the other clan members came face to face with the individual. He stood half naked, his upper torso exposed, revealing a physique so flawless it was as though heaven itself had craved it. His long, golden hair flowed behind him with unnatural grace, swaying gently as if caught in a soft breeze, even though they were all submerged in water. The Azure Dragon clan humbly greets the Great One. Zhao Zhanhai and the others called out in unison, their heads lowered in deep submission and reverence, their voices echoing with solemn respect. Chapter 2008, The Great One's Appearance, 2. Chapter 2008, The Great One's Appearance, 2. Despite the Great One's seemingly sudden appearance, the Azure Dragon clan was not surprised at all. In fact, they'd anticipated his appearance when they learned that it was Dragon Goddess Yayo who had stopped the mystic Sea Dragon clan's invasion from Yuan. The Great One narrowed his golden eyes, his naturally arrogant gaze sweeping over the Azure Dragon clan like he had absolute authority over them. "So, you've anticipated my arrival, have you?" he said, his voice calm yet imposing. "Then you must also know why I'm here. Let's not waste time and tell me what I want to know. Is it true that Dragon Goddess Yayo appeared here recently?" "Yes, that is correct." Jiao Jinhai didn't dare to lie before the Great One, since he could see through everything. "Tell me everything, and do it from the very beginning. If you dare try to mislead me or leave even the slightest details out, it'll completely wipe your bloodline from existence. Do I make myself clear?" The Great One's aura surged in a threatening manner. Jiao Zhenhai and the others trembled beneath the weight of the Great One's overwhelming presence. Knowing full well that this being did not bluff or tolerate deceit, Zhenhai quickly recalled everything. From the moment their family had been poisoned by the mystic Sea Dragon clan, to their fateful encounter with Yuan, and ultimately the appearance of Dragon Goddess Yayo herself, which ended up driving the mystic Sea Dragon clan away. Yuan, the Great One, narrowed his eyes after hearing this familiar name. However, no matter how vast his experience or knowledge, there was simply no way he could have linked Yuan's existence to the immortal monarch, even with all the information he had been given. Even with the information that Yuan possessed the immortal monarch's blood, he assumed it had been bestowed upon him by Dragon Goddess Yayo. "I need more information." The Great One set his sights on the Holy Dragon clan next. Before leaving the Azure Dragon clan, the Great One said, "Since you've experienced Dragon Goddess Yu's prowess firsthand, I want you to do some quick comparison." Without warning, he suddenly unleashed a surge of his aura, so immense that it didn't just engulf the Azure Dragon clan's territory, but swept across the entire sea of dragons like a tidal wave. The sudden eruption of aura startled every living entity within the sea, sending beasts and cultivators alike fleeing from his direction, as if their very lives depended on it. Within the Azure Dragon clan, the pressure was unbearable and so overwhelming that even the strongest among them coughed up mouthfuls of blood. Not even a God Ascension Realm cultivator like Jiao Zhenhai was spared. Fortunately, the Great One quickly retracted his aura a second later, or everyone around him would have died from the pressure alone. "If you were to compare my aura to that of Dragon Goddess Yayo," the Great One asked, his voice devoid of guilt or apology, "how did I measure up? Would you say I'm stronger?" After taking a moment to catch his breath, Jiao Zhenhai responded, "Your aura was definitely stronger than what I felt from Dragon Goddess Yayo." A satisfied smile tugged at the corners of the Great One's handsome face. Without another word, he turned and soared away, his figure cutting through the water like it didn't exist as he headed straight toward the Holy Dragon clan. A heavy silence lingered over the Azure Dragon clan and the underwater city, persisting long after the Great One had departed. Eventually, Jiao Zhenhai let out a deep, weary sigh. "I have the feeling that even if we had succeeded in claiming the Dragon Spiral Mountain, the Great One still wouldn't have offered us his help." The others silently nodded, agreeing with him. A few days later, the Great One arrogantly announced his arrival by engulfing the entire Dragon Spiral Mountain in his overwhelming presence, just as he did to the Azure Dragon clan. Immediately, the Holy Dragon Emperor approached him and greeted. "The Holy Dragon clan greets the Great One." The Great One narrowed his eyes and remarked, "Just like the Azure Dragon clan, you anticipated my appearance. Did Dragon Goddess Yayo warn you that I'd show up?" "No, but knowing your history with her, anyone would make this assumption," he said. "Then you must also know why I am here." "Yes, it's true that Dragon Goddess Yayo has returned," the Holy Dragon Emperor admitted. Based on the Great One's earlier comment, the Holy Dragon Emperor knew that he had visited the Azure Dragon clan prior to showing up at the Holy Dragon clan, so there was no reason to hide it, and it only enraged him. "Tell me everything you know," said the Great One, his overbearing tone leaving no room for discussion. However, the Holy Dragon Emperor shook his head and said, "Unfortunately, that is not possible." The Great One narrowed his eyes ever so slightly, fixing the Holy Dragon Emperor with a gaze that radiated silent menace. "Since I am in a good mood, we'll pretend I didn't hear your last sentence. You better choose your next words wisely, or I might sink the dragon's spiral mountain by accident, said the Great One as his aura began to surge violently. Who knows? It might even summon Dragon Goddess Yeo once she learns of it. Why are you still chasing after Dragon Goddess Yeo? I heard she wants nothing to do with you. Aren't you afraid of incurring her wrath? I might have feared her in the past, but things are different now. I don't know where she has been this entire time, but I am quite certain that I have surpassed her during her absence. Once I find her, I'm going to battle and defeat her. In the past, when the Great One pursued Dragon Goddess Yeo, she would always say that she'd only accept someone stronger than herself, hence why Head started collecting treasures and using them to strengthen himself. Chapter 2009, The Great One's Appearance, 3. Chapter 2009, The Great One's Appearance, 3. The Holy Dragon Emperor could only sigh inwardly after hearing the Great One's declaration that Head defeat Dragon Goddess Yeo. While it was true that Dragon Goddess Yeo may not have been improving her strength since her disappearance because she had lost her body and her soul had split into several parts, nobody could say for certain that the Great One had surpassed her, but it was definitely a possibility. Once I defeat her, I'll finally obtain the one thing I've yearned but failed to claim in this life, the Great One declared, his eyes burning with fervent determination. The Holy Dragon Emperor narrowed his eyes at the Great One's words, which carried an unsettling undertone, as if he saw Dragon Goddess Yeo not as a person, but as something to be claimed. In any case, I cannot help you. They didn't mention where they go after leaving the Dragon Spiral Mountain. The smile on the Great One's face slowly disappeared, and he responded, Maybe, but I won't know for sure until I force it out of you. How many do I have to kill to make you talk? Half. The Holy Dragon Emperor sneered in disdain. You may have gotten stronger over the years, but your character has fallen quite lowly, Great One. Even if you kill everyone, my answer will remain the same. I don't know where Dragon Goddess Yeo went. The Great One said nothing in return, but his aura surged violently, speaking louder than any words ever could. The Holy Dragon Emperor wasted no time, instantly transforming into his dragon form. Though he knew full well that the Great One stood as an even greater threat than the Celestial Emperor had been, he refused to retreat. Defeat was likely, but cowering was never an option. It's been a while since a dragon has dared to defy me, so I'll enjoy this for a while. Moments later, the Great One and the Holy Dragon Emperor collided in a thunderous clash, their fierce exchanges unleashing shockwaves in every direction, each impact chipping away at the dragon's spiral mountain, piece by piece. Heavens! The Great One is attacking us. What should we do? The Holy Dragon clan was thrown into momentary panic, but their hesitation didn't last. Just like when the Celestial Emperor attacked, they surged forward to assist him, even if their efforts barely made a dent in the overwhelming power of the Great One. Though the Great One's individual power surpassed even that of the Celestial Emperor, the Holy Dragon clan managed to hold out against him far longer than expected. Of course, this endurance was only possible because the Great One was clearly holding back. If the Great One had gone all out from the beginning, the Holy Dragon clan would have perished almost instantly. Eventually, the Great One hovered alone above the dragon's spiral mountain, his presence dominating the skies. Below him, the Holy Dragon Emperor and the rest of the clan lay scattered across the battered landscape, defeated and motionless, unable to lift even a finger after their overwhelming defeat. Their fight had attracted many spectators again, though not as many as when the Celestial Emperor attacked. What the hell? Isn't that the Great One? Why is he attacking the Holy Dragon clan too? I don't know what the Holy Dragon clan did, but to offend both the Celestial Emperor and the Great One. They're fated to be erased from existence soon. And since it's the Great One, the other Royal Dragon clans wouldn't be able to do anything about it. Sometime later, the Great One's voice echoed across the battered peaks, loud and clear, rippling through the mountain like thunder. Though I do not wish to do this because of my respect for Dragon Goddess Yeo, your defiance cannot go unpunished. As retribution, I shall destroy the final dragon's spiral mountain in the 9 heavens." The Great One raised a single finger, and in an instant, an overwhelming aura surged from his body. At the tip of his finger, a small orb of condensed energy began to form, glowing intensely. It rapidly expanded, growing larger and brighter until it blazed in the sky like a miniature sun, radiating power that shook the heavens. Moments later, the Great One gave a casual flick of his finger, and the blazing miniature sun shot through the air toward the mountain. As it descended, the heat radiating from it was so intense that it caused the surrounding sea to boil violently, sending waves of steam rising into the heavens. The Holy Dragon clan could do nothing but watch in helpless silence as the blazing sun descended upon them. One by one, they began to close their eyes, not out of fear, but in solemn acceptance of the death they could no longer escape. However, amid the chaos and impending doom, a lone figure silently appeared between the descending sun and the dragon's spiral mountain like a ghost. He was small in stature, appearing no older than a young teenager, yet his eyes gleamed with ancient knowledge and unfathomable experience. Strangely, he emitted no presence whatsoever, and his body was semi-transparent, as if he didn't exist within the fabric of reality itself. Though the Holy Dragon clan failed to notice him because of his lack of presence, the Great One did not. The moment his eyes fell upon the small figure, his body tensed, and a flicker of something rare flashed in his eyes. Hesitation. Without a word, he clenched his fists, and in an instant, the blazing sun above dissipated, abruptly canceling his attack. "What is the meaning of this?" The Great One spoke with a frown on his face. "It'd be problematic if you were to destroy the dragon's spiral mountain," said the young teenager. "I wasn't talking about the dragon's spiral mountain. Why are you here? Isn't it obvious? I'm here to stop you. With an avatar that doesn't even have an ounce of power." The Great One sneered. "Are you looking down on me? You're right. I don't have any power in this state, so I cannot physically stop your actions. However, I can offer you a word of advice. If you were to destroy the dragon's spiral mountain, senior sister Yayo will not forgive you," said the young teenager. "You speak as if it's a certainty. Both you and Yayo vanished without a trace after that bastard's era came to an end, only to reappear now, at the exact same time?" The Great One's eyes narrowed, voice edged with suspicion and frustration. "What is the meaning of this? Dragon Ancestor?" The Great One's last words shocked all of the spectators. Nobody there could have anticipated the reappearance of the Dragon Ancestor. That teenager is the Dragon Ancestor, the third dragon of origin. I thought he died long ago. No, he simply disappeared, just like Dragon Goddess Yayo. For both of them to show up now, something big will happen in the 9 heavens very soon. As murmurs of concern spread among the spectators, the Dragon Ancestor finally spoke, his tone calm, but laced with biting sarcasm. "Are you upset we didn't include you? Feeling left out?" He paused, his gaze unflinching. "Well, maybe that wouldn't have happened if you hadn't spent those days hounding senior sister Yayo like some lovesick, perverted maniac." The Great One trembled, his eyes flaring with rage. "Do not mock my feelings for her," he roared. "I am not mocking you. I am merely reminding you why senior sister Yayo despised you, and why she ultimately chose to keep you out of our group. And if you continue to chase after her like you did in the past, I doubt she'll be able to resist killing you." "Ha ha! Kill me. Maybe she had that power in the past, but things are different now. I'm stronger than her." The Great One laughed. The Dragon Ancestor merely shook his head with a pitiful smile. "Oh, you ignorant one. Senior sister Yu's power is far more than you can fathom. And what you witnessed in the past was merely a fraction of her true power, since neither you nor I was strong enough to make her fight seriously." The Great One was left speechless, his eyes widening in disbelief. What she showed me was only a fraction of her true strength. Even for someone like him, such a thought was difficult to accept, nearly unfathomable. The Dragon Ancestor suddenly glanced down at his body, watching as it began to fade, his form slowly unraveling into fragments of light. "Looks like my time is running out," he muttered, then lifted his gaze to meet the Great One's. If you truly intend to destroy the Dragon Spiral Mountain, there's nothing I could do to stop you. However, bear this in mind, that senior sister Yayo would skin you alive if you did. And instead of chasing after her, why don't you come find me? He'll share with you one of senior sister Yu's greatest secrets. Before the Great One could respond, the dragon ancestor's body vanished, as if he had never existed in the first place. The Great One continued to hover above the dragon's spiral mountain long after the dragon ancestor had faded, his expression unreadable as he lingered in silence, lost in deep thought. Eventually, the Great One clicked his tongue in annoyance, and without saying a word, he vanished from the skies above the dragon's spiral mountain, leaving behind only the weight of his presence and the silence that followed. The Holy Dragon Emperor could only stare at the sky in disbelief. Looks like we're fated to continue serving Dragon Goddess Yayo, he mumbled. Chapter 2010, The Dragon Ancestor's Unexpected Appearance. Chapter 2010, The Dragon Ancestor's Unexpected Appearance. Shortly after the second incident, news of the events at the Dragon Spiral Mountain spread through the 9 heavens like wildfire. You will not believe what just happened at the Dragon Spiral Mountain. Aren't you a little late to the party? I heard about that literally a day after it happened several months ago. No, this is a new incident that just happened recently. This time, it was the Great One who attacked the Holy Dragon Clan at the Dragon Spiral Mountain. Heavens, the Great One? You're lying. For dragons like them, that's even worse than offending the Celestial Emperor. After all, not even the Royal Dragon clans could do anything about it. I'm serious. Not only that, but the Dragon Ancestor, who is thought to have died long ago, also made an appearance, though he was in the form of an avatar, so something might have happened to his physical body. The Dragon Ancestor is back. We had just received news of Dragon Goddess Yu's return. What in heaven's name is happening in the 9 heavens? News of the Dragon Ancestor's appearance sent unprecedented shockwaves throughout the 9 heavens, far greater than those caused by the mention of Dragon Goddess Yayo, primarily because his name carried even greater fame and influence. Unlike the Great One, who lived a selfish life, and Dragon Goddess Yayo, who lived a secluded one, the Dragon Ancestor was the only one who communicated with and offered assistance to the other dragon clans. To many dragon clans, he was regarded as their forefather, the true dragon of origin. Beyond that, the Dragon Ancestor had established his own lineage, one that continues to reign as the foremost dragon clan in all of the 9 heavens. His influence was nothing short of unfathomable. Upon hearing of the Dragon Ancestor's return and his words to find him, even though they were meant for the Great One, the 10 royal dragon clans wasted no time, dispatching their armies across the 9 heavens in a relentless search for his whereabouts. Naturally, the Celestial Emperor became even more cautious when he received this news. Meanwhile, while the entire world was in an uproar, Yuan continued to spend his time with his own people, especially his partners, spending most of his time in the bedroom with them. A month passed since his meeting with Senior Bai. A familiar figure appeared at the super-perfect physique tempering sect. It was none other than Meili. Sister Meili. Feng Liuxiang was very happy to see her. Hello, everyone. I'm sorry it took this long for me to come here. I had to travel the 7th heaven without using any teleportation formations, which took a while, she apologized. Are you okay? I hear you were in the fight with Heaven's Mandate. Yuan asked her. She nodded, thankfully. If it weren't for Yin and Yang, I would have definitely died that day, she sighed. What about Dong Yi? Do you know where he's at? He then asked. We went our separate ways once I was close enough to you guys. Unfortunately, he didn't tell me anything before leaving. That's fine. He's a crafty and cautious person. He'll return to us soon. With Meili's return, the others began catching up with her. By the way, did you hear? The Great One attacked the Dragon Spiral Mountain after the Celestial Emperor and the Dragon Ancestor showed up to stop him. Meili revealed what she heard during her journey. What? The Dragon Ancestor? Yuan's eyes widened at this information. Yes, but from what I heard, it was just his avatar, so he didn't appear in the flesh. Yuan narrowed his eyes and said, either he was too far away, so he sent his avatar, or something happened to his physical body. She merely nodded and added, he also told the Great One to find him. However, it could just be a stalling tactic. Maybe Yeo knows something. I will ask her later, said Yuan. Okay. And shortly after Meixiu's appearance, Kelan emerged from his seclusion. Though his cultivation remained the same, his aura had changed drastically since his seclusion. Yuan, let's fight again. The first thing he did after coming out of seclusion was ask for a fight. Sure. Yuan immediately accepted, since he was also itching for a fight after spending so much time in the bedroom. Yuan and Kelan met up at the White Training Ground the following day. The others also showed up to spectate. Although I lost to you last time, I have a good feeling the results will be different this time, Kelan proudly declared as they stood a dozen meters away from each other. Yuan smiled and said, you'd better have improved drastically after learning such a precious technique. Kelan fell silent for a moment. Then, with a solemn expression, he said, I know I shouldn't pry, but my curiosity won't let me stay quiet. Where in heaven's name did you obtain this technique, which was believed to be lost to time itself? He quickly added, of course, you don't have to answer it. I just wanted to get the question off my chest. Yuan then said, I acquired it from the Nameless Emperor's tomb. The Nameless Emperor's tomb. To think such a precious treasure has been hiding there for this long. It really makes one wonder what else is hidden in that death trap. Kelan had visited the Nameless Emperor's tomb more than once, but each venture yielded nothing of true value. After barely escaping with his life during his last expedition, he swore never to return, as the risks simply outweighed the rewards. However, upon learning that Yuan had acquired such a priceless technique from that very place, doubt crept into his conviction, and he began to reconsider. All right, enough yapping from me. Let me show you how far I've come with the great mammoth body refinement technique. Kelan's aura erupted as his body began to swell, muscles bulging and bones creaking, growing taller and bigger until he resembled that of a true giant. Chapter 2011, Referral. Chapter 2011. Referral, though his size paled in comparison to Coolest during his reign as the Giant Emperor, Kelan had reached a level of mastery that allowed him to amplify both his size and strength in just a few short months, something that required geniuses decades to achieve during the primordial era. Come! When Yuan beckoned him, Kelan charged like a sumo wrestler, each thunderous step shaking the ground beneath him. Just like before, Yuan met him head-on, unarmed and relying solely on his body. Wanting to test the limit of his new technique, Kelan only used his physique and nothing else. He figured he would be able to rival Yuan with his new technique somehow. Unfortunately for him, it didn't take long for Kelan to return to reality. Fuck, it's only been a few months, but his physique has gotten even stronger. Kelan quickly realized that he wasn't the only one who had grown stronger during the last few months. Of course, Yuan didn't do any real training, and the only exercise he did was in the bedroom with his partners and a few light spars with the others. However, his soul and body were still in the process of merging, so he was constantly getting stronger without needing to do anything, much like Liuxiang's situation. Yuan smiled and said, you may have learned a new technique, but you still haven't learned your lesson. What? What lesson? Kelan frowned. To never underestimate me. Yuan laughed out loud as he began pushing Kelan back despite the difference in their size. Also, have you already forgotten how you acquired the technique? A profound smile appeared on Yuan's face as his body suddenly began growing, quickly reaching Kelan's size. Why you? Though he knew he shouldn't be surprised. After all, he had learned the technique from Yuan. Kelan still couldn't help but be flabbergasted after seeing Yuan use the great mammoth body refinement technique. However, Yuan didn't remain in his giant form for long and said, though I can use the technique, I don't like increasing my size to make myself an easier target, and it hinders my mobility too. Of course, The biggest reason why Yuan stopped using the Great Mammoth Body Refinement technique was simply because he didn't need it. What's wrong? Are you done already? Yuan asked when Kelan stopped moving and stood still like an iron statue. As you wish, Kelan shouted before he resumed his assault. Since he couldn't defeat Yuan with the Great Mammoth Body Refinement technique alone, he began using his martial techniques. Eventually, he started using his Cultivation and Immortal Qi. Yet, the results remained the same, and Yuan continued to push him back. However, despite how badly he was still losing to Yuan, Kelan refused to use Celestial Qi. It was the one thing he swore he wouldn't use unless Yuan could use Celestial Qi, as it would be too unfair. Their sparring lasted for nearly an entire week, until Kelan was forced to stop because he received a certain message. Okay, let's stop here, Kelan suddenly said. Senior Bai has contacted me, saying that your referral is ready, whatever that means. I was also summoned by Celestial Overlord Su. Oh, I'm going to train at the Holy Sword Temple, Yuan explained. Did you just say the Holy Sword Temple? But you're still immortal. So what? One sword understanding has nothing to do with their cultivation. Theoretically, a mortal can use Supreme Sword Aura. Yeah, there's no way. Kelan shook his head. You may be a monster, but even you cannot learn Supreme Sword Aura at your age. Want to bet? Yuan said with a smile. Kelan instantly hesitated despite his earlier confidence. No, I'm fine. What a pity. I was going to bet another lost technique compatible with your giant bloodline. Yuan shrugged. What? Kelan exclaimed. Is that true? It doesn't matter anymore since you don't want to bet. I'll bet. Kelan hastily changed his mind. He continued, what do you want? If that technique is as valuable as the Great Mammoth Body Refinement technique, I don't think I have anything I can use to bet. If I win, you let me take a look at your treasury and pick any one treasure I want. How about it? Are you sure? I may own a sect, but my treasury is quite lackluster. You will definitely be disappointed, he said. That's up for me to decide. All right, if that's what you want, don't complain afterward. Not that you'll win. Also, they'll give you 100 years to train at the Holy Sword Temple. Yuan raised his eyebrows. 100 years? You're being too generous. You might as well give me the treasure now. Kelan frowned and said, then 10 years. You have 10 years to learn Supreme Sword Aura. Sure. Yuan nodded. Kelan extended his hand and said, let's shake on it. After shaking on it, they left the training grounds and made their way to the myriad of techniques. The others stayed back so they wouldn't end up crowding the place. When they arrived at the myriad of techniques, it wasn't just Senior Bai present, but Su Jiechi as well. It's been a while, Sister Su. However, Su Jiechi didn't respond. She simply stared at him with wide eyes, frozen in place. Although she had long believed Yuan to be the reincarnation of the Celestial Overlord's founder, seeing him fully grown left her breathless, and her memories of the founder were forcefully resurfaced. However, she quickly snapped out of it and said, sorry, but you look just like the Celestial Overlord's founder. If I had seen you outside, I would have definitely mistaken you for him. She swiftly reached into her spatial ring and retrieved a crimson, sword-shaped badge, its surface etched with ancient symbols. Holding it with both hands, she offered it to him. This is your referral, she said. Present it to the masters of the Holy Sword Temple, and they will allow you to enter. Thank you. Yuan accepted the badge and inspected it with interest. Chapter 2012, Grand Sword Crater. Chapter 2012, Grand Sword Crater. When will you head to the Holy Sword Temple? Su Jiechi asked Yuan shortly after giving him the sword-shaped badge. I'll have to figure out how to get there first, he said. Though he had been to the Holy Sword Temple before as Tian Xn, he couldn't recall how to get there. Only the Holy Sword Clan, who owns the place, can bring you to the Holy Sword Temple, Su Jiechi explained. So, I have to contact the Holy Sword Clan, huh? Where do I find them? While their main headquarters is in the 9th heaven, They also have a branch in the 7th and 8th heaven. You can find them at the Grand Sword Crater. The Grand Sword Crater, right? You'll go find them as soon as possible. Good luck. The Holy Sword Clan is known for being eccentric, so try not to cause any trouble. They're also a top 20 faction with the most sword masters in the world, said Senior Bai. No promises, Yuan said with a playful smile. Yuan left shortly after, leaving Kelan behind. Once Yuan was gone, Su Jiechi turned her attention to Kelan. Now, then, Commander Kelan. Why, yes. Kelan subconsciously straightened his back after being called. I'm pretty sure I instructed you to notify me immediately when Yuan returns. Yet, you ignored my order and went straight to seclusion after his return. What do you have to say about that? She narrowed her gaze at him. Kelan lowered his head and apologized. I'm sorry. I got too excited when he gave me a technique. A technique? Senior Bai and Su Jiechi raised their eyebrows. Kelan was extremely picky when it came to learning new techniques, so it was pretty surprising to hear that he had gotten so excited about a technique that he forgot about his mission. Though they were intrigued by the technique, they didn't force Kelan to reveal it since that was his private business with Yuan. They'll let you go with a warning this time, Su Jiechi said. Thank you, Celestial Overlord. After returning to the sect, Yuan explained the situation to the others. So you'll be leaving again soon. Liuxiang sighed. Though she knew he would eventually leave again, it didn't make her feel better when that time finally arrived. I won't be leaving immediately. I promised Ro that I'd let her know before I leave, so he'll stay here until our next meeting, said Yuan. Thus, Yuan spent his remaining time in the sect with them until it was time for his meeting with Ro. At the myriad of techniques, Yuan announced his next destination to Ro and the others at the end of their meeting. How long do you think you'll be gone this time? Ro asked. It's hard to say, but it'll definitely be at least a few years. I see. Ro lowered her head for a moment, but she quickly raised her head again and spoke with a calm smile. Be safe, brother. The same goes for you. Ro went to embrace him the next moment. See you later. After leaving the myriad of techniques, Yuan immediately began preparing to head to the Holy Sword Temple. Since I cannot enter your Dantian like the others, I'll stay here and train with the others, she merely said to Yuan before he left. Yuan nodded. After saying his goodbyes with the others, Yuan left the super-perfect physique tempering sect and made his way toward the Grand Sword Crater. Unfortunately, there was no teleportation device near his destination, so he could only teleport to the nearest place and travel from there. After emerging from the teleportation device, Yuan wasted no time and used Liuxiang's flying treasure to travel. 3 months later, Yuan arrived at his destination. This is the Grand Sword Crater. Liuxiang murmured, her voice filled with awe as her gaze swept across the horizon. True to its name, the Grand Sword Crater was a monumental sight, a single, flawless gash carved into the land, stretching thousands of miles in length and plunging deep into the earth like a wound left by a heavenly blade. Though the landscape resembled the aftermath of a cataclysmic battle, the vast fissure was far from abandoned, with countless sword masters moving busily around and within its depths. Legend has it that this colossal fissure was carved by a sword emperor with a single strike. Now, sword masters from across the world gather here, hoping to glean insight from the remnants of his might and deepen their own understanding of the sword. Of course, not every sword master came here in pursuit of insight. In truth, the majority sought to attract the attention of the Holy Sword Clan, who frequented the crater in search of talented sword masters to recruit for their faction. To draw the attention of the Holy Sword Clan, many sword masters would periodically release their sword aura, feigning moments of insight, while others openly practiced their sword techniques in hopes of being noticed. What a bunch of weirdos, Liuxiang remarked when she saw the odd scene before her. Sometime later, Yuan began wandering the Grand Sword Crater in search of the Holy Sword Clan. White and golden robes, Yuan occasionally muttered to himself as he used divine sense to quickly scout the area without stopping. Several days later, Yuan came to a stop when he finally found someone who looked to be from the Holy Sword Clan. He focused his divine sense on a bald old man clad in elegant white and gold robes adorned with intricate sword engravings. The old man was surrounded by sword masters, yet his gaze was fixed on a lone youth quietly cultivating before him, exuding a decent amount of enhanced sword aura. Not bad. Not bad at all. The old man nodded in acknowledgement. Seeing this, envy flickered in the eyes of the surrounding sword masters, each secretly wishing it was their sword aura that had captured the old man's attention. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc. Chapter 2013, Holy Sword Clan. Chapter 2013, Holy Sword Clan. When Yuan saw the situation, he decided not to interrupt, but to spectate instead. A few minutes later, the young man had caught the attention of the old man from the Holy Sword Clan, opened his eyes, and stood up, seemingly unaware of the elder's presence. The old man cleared his throat loudly to announce his presence before speaking. "Young man, what's your name?" The young man was startled momentarily, but he quickly recovered when he saw the old man's white and golden robes. Then he hastily lowered his body and bowed. "This junior is called Chu Ling. I apologize for not noticing you earlier, senior." The old man smiled and said, "It's my fault for sneaking up on you. Anyway, if you don't mind me asking, how old are you?" "This junior is currently 3,291 years old," the young man responded. The surrounding sword masters expressed surprise after hearing the young man's response. "So you've achieved enhanced sword aura in under 5,000 years. Very impressive indeed. Do you currently have a teacher?" The old man continued to ask, almost like he was giving a job interview. "No, I do not, but I did spend 1,000 years at the Gleaming Sword Sect." The old man nodded before retrieving what looked like a slab of metal and said, "If you can leave even the slightest scratch on this plate using your enhanced sword aura, it'll recruit you into the Holy Sword Clan." Chu Ling swallowed nervously at the opportunity before him. The Holy Sword Clan was home to 3 sword emperors. Joining them was a dream pursued by countless sword masters. "Are you willing to accept this challenge?" the old man asked. "I am willing," Chu Ling immediately responded. The old man nodded and placed the medal on the ground. "Whenever you are ready," he said. Chu Ling retrieved his sword and took a moment to prepare himself. Then, everyone watched as Chu Ling's body surged with enhanced sword aura, and he struck the metal plate with a resounding clang that echoed through the crater. The spectators anticipated Chu Ling to leave a mark on the metal plate, but to their shock, he was suddenly hurled backward like a rag doll. Before anyone could make sense of what had just happened, a cold, mocking laughter echoed through the air. All eyes turned toward the old man, who was now laughing hysterically, as though he had just witnessed the most absurd joke in the world. What is going on?" Chu Ling muttered in a daze as he slowly got back to his feet. The old man responded, "That was the best you could do with that level of enhanced sword aura? What a waste of talents." "What's happening, young master?" Liuxiang asked, as she was just as confused as the others. Yuan calmly explained, "While his enhanced sword aura is indeed commendable, he has no idea how to wield it. It's like handing a divine blade to a child. Powerful, yet utterly wasted." "I didn't know you needed to know how to use sword aura," Liuxiang remarked. "While weapon aura is inherently powerful and can be used as is, you still need to learn to control it to utilize its full potential. It's like comparing a sharp knife with a dull knife." The old man approached Chu Ling and shook his head. "Sorry, but it looks like you didn't pass the test. Please give me one more chance. I will do it properly this time." Chu Ling fell to his knees and begged. The old man narrowed his eyes and sneered in disdain. "Another chance? Do you know how many people here would kill for a first chance? You were given a chance, but you squandered it." Without giving Chu Ling another look, the old man turned around and walked away, leaving him devastated. However, before the old man could get too far, Yuan descended right before him, blocking his path. The old man halted his movements and stared at Yuan with a somewhat surprised face. had been wandering the Grand Sword Crater for many years, but nobody had so boldly stood in his path before. "Do you think I can give it a go?" Yuan asked. "What?" The old man frowned. "That metal slab. I want to try striking it with my sword aura," he clarified. "I don't know if you're acting on boldness or pure stupidity, but I will give you a chance to walk away with your life." Yuan didn't say anything, but he exuded some of his sword aura. It wasn't his enhanced sword aura, but just his ordinary sword aura. The old man's eyes widened after sensing Yuan's ordinary sword aura, even doubting his own eyes for a second. His ordinary sword aura feels as powerful as the last guy's enhanced sword aura. But how is that possible? He cried inwardly, not daring to believe what he was sensing. In order to confirm the phenomenon before him, the old man retrieved the metal slab and tossed it on the ground. "Go ahead." Without saying a word, Yuan retrieved a random sword from his spatial ring and swung it at the metal slab. The people around them expected to hear a loud, clanging sound like usual, but to their puzzlement, Yuan's strike didn't make even the slightest sound. Did he miss? They wondered out loud as their eyes shifted to the metal slab on the ground. No way. Despite staring at the object with their own eyes, nobody there dared to believe what they were witnessing. This is... The old man's voice trembled as he stared at the metal slab lying on the ground, now cleanly split in two. It's not as durable as I thought it would be," Yuan muttered. The old man's body shook. Then, without warning, he lunged forward and grabbed both of Yuan's arms. "You must join our Holy Sword Clan," he declared. However, Yuan remained calm and said, "I think there's been a misunderstanding. I'm not trying to join the Holy Sword Clan." "What?" It wasn't just the old man. Everyone present wore the same stunned expression after hearing Yuan's words, their minds struggling to grasp such nonsense. Chapter 2014, Holy Sword Clan 2. Chapter 2014, Holy Sword Clan 2. After a moment of silence, the old man cleared his throat and spoke in a forceful tone. "I must have misheard you just now. Can you repeat what you said?" "I said that I am not interested in joining the Holy Sword Clan," Yuan calmly repeated, shocking everyone there for a second time. "Blasphemy! If you're not interested in joining the Holy Sword Clan, why did you even bother with the metal plate? Are you messing with me?" The old man exclaimed, his face flushed in redness. However, he didn't give up and continued trying to recruit Yuan. The Holy Sword Clan is the #1 faction for sword masters in the 9 heavens. If you wish to become a sword emperor, your best chance lies with us. We not only house 3 sword emperors, but the majority of sword emperors in history have hailed from our clan," the old man proclaimed, his tone filled with pride as he tried to sway Yuan's decision. "They'll think about it after I finish training at the Holy Sword Temple," Yuan calmly responded. "What? The Holy Sword Temple?" The old man wore a dumbfounded expression on his face, but before he could speak further, Yuan retrieved the sword-shaped badge from his spatial ring and showed it off. "This is my actual reason for approaching you," he said. "That's the Holy Sword emblem. Where did you get that from?" The old man exclaimed. "Does it matter where?" "Of course it does. How do I know that you didn't steal it or find it by chance?" Yuan didn't argue further and showed the old man his faction symbol. "I got it from some of my faction, Celestial Overlords." The old man and those around him sucked in a breath of cold breath after seeing his faction symbol. "All right, come with me. They'll take you to our headquarters to speak with the elders." Yuan nodded and silently followed the old man into the depths of the Grand Sword Crater. After descending to the bottom of the massive fissure, they proceeded northward without pause. Though the number of sword masters within the Grand Sword Crater wasn't as overwhelming as outside, their presence was still significant, and Yuan couldn't go more than a few minutes without witnessing one practicing their sword techniques. After several days of travel and passing by numerous members of the Holy Sword Clan, they finally arrived at the clan's headquarters, located in the widest expanse of the Grand Sword Crater. Sandwiched between 2 colossal walls of earth stood several sword-shaped buildings, each varying in height but radiating the same grand presence. The old man brought Yuan to the tallest building and then had him wait inside one of the guest rooms. "Wait here while I bring one of our elders here," said the old man before walking out and closing the door. However, Yuan could tell that the old man didn't leave and remained outside for some reason. A few moments later, the door opened and the old man walked back inside. "My name is Li Bowen, the fourth elder of the Holy Sword clan," he introduced himself. The old man's unusual actions left Yuan speechless. Li Bowen smiled and said, "There's no need for the suspicious looks. I really am an elder." He then took a seat right in front of Yuan and continued, "All right, let's get straight to the topic. The Holy Sword Temple." Yuan quietly nodded. "Although you have the Holy Sword emblem, that is only one of the requirements to enter the Holy Sword Temple. Is that your true cultivation?" Li Bowen asked. "Yes, it is. In all my years at the Holy Sword clan, I have never heard of a mortal asking to enter the Holy Sword Temple, much less stand before one myself. Do you even know what you're getting yourself into? As long as I can learn Supreme Sword Aura, I don't care." Li Bowen narrowed his eyes and said, "The Holy Sword Temple may serve as a training ground, but it is a perilous place where even immortals can easily lose their life, much less a mortal like you. I'm sure you already know that. So, I won't waste my breath trying to change your mind. However, I still have to test your qualifications." "How will you do that?" Yuan asked. "It's very simple and straightforward. I just need to test your enhanced sword aura." "Sound good? Then follow me." The next moment, they left the room, and Li Bowen led Yuan to another building. Within it lay a vast training ground, where several sword masters were striking a towering wall with their enhanced sword aura. Naturally, the wall was forged from a special material, similar to the metal slab Yuan had effortlessly split in two, but also vastly different at the same time. The sword masters in the room struck the wall with meticulously controlled enhanced sword aura and had been doing so for several hours now. Yet not a single one of them managed to leave even the faintest scratch. This wall is forged from a unique material with unparalleled resistance to slashing attacks. Don't even think about comparing it to the metal slab you cut through a few days ago. This is at least 1,000 times more durable, Li Bowen explained with a somewhat proud look on his face. "So, how deep does the cut need to be for me to qualify?" Yuan asked. Li Bowen smiled and replied, 1 inch. If you can somehow manage to leave a cut that deep on this wall, it'll personally take you to the Holy Sword Temple. But there's a condition. You can only use a spirit-grade sword and rely solely on your enhanced sword aura. No martial techniques, no powerful treasures. Fair enough. Li Bowen retrieved an ordinary spirit-grade sword that one could purchase from anywhere and handed it to Yuan. "Whenever you're..." Li Bowen abruptly paused mid-sentence, his expression tightening. Sensing several unfamiliar auras entering the building, he turned toward the entrance, and his eyes widened in disbelief after seeing their faces. What are they doing here?" he muttered under his breath, his voice tinged with shock and unease. Meanwhile, those training at the wall halted their training and quietly bowed to the group. Yuan followed Li Bowen's gaze toward the group that had just stepped into the building. There were 6 individuals in total, but all eyes were naturally drawn to the 2 at the front. A strikingly beautiful young woman and a handsome young man, both adorned in the distinguished robes of the Holy Sword clan. "We'll be back. Don't do anything until then," Li Bowen said to Yuan before approaching the group. "Greetings, Holy Sword Maiden, Holy Sword King, and everyone else." "Elderly, it's been a while," said the handsome man, who was known as the Holy Sword King within the Holy Sword clan. "Yes, it's been around 150 years. What brought you guys to the 7th heaven?" "The Sword Emperor qualifications, of course. I know there's still a few years before it begins, but we decided to come down earlier," he explained. "I see. Do you mind if we use the training ground for a bit?" The Holy Sword Maiden suddenly said. "Of course not. But at your level, we won't be the ones to use it," she elaborated, looking at the other 4 behind her. "Oh, I see. In any case, feel free to use it. If you need anything, don't hesitate to call me." "Thank you." Li Bowen returned to Yuan shortly after and said to him, "Sorry, but we'll have to do your qualifications another time. But it won't even take a minute. I just need to hit the wall once, Yuan said. Li Bowen responded with voice transmission. I know, but this isn't about that. Do you see that beautiful woman with silver hair and that young man with the short red hair? They're the Holy Sword Maiden and the Holy Sword King. Their status within the Holy Sword clan is only below the Sword Emperors. While the Holy Sword Maiden might not mind your presence, the Holy Sword King is known for being easily irritable. I am doing this for your own good. If you offend them, you can kiss your chance to enter the Holy Sword Temple, even with a referral. Don't worry, I doubt they'll stay for too long. Yuan found a pain in the ass, but had rather wait a few days, even weeks, if it meant not causing any unnecessary trouble. I don't mind waiting a little, he said. Thank you for your understanding. You can stay in one of our guest rooms for now, Li Bowen said. The next moment, Yuan followed Li Bowen to the exit. Who's that? The Holy Sword Maiden asked one of the sword masters who had been training there before their arrival. I'm not sure. He arrived only a few moments earlier than you guys, but I think he was trying to qualify for the Holy Sword Temple. The Holy Sword King laughed and said, There's no way. That guy was immortal. Oh, then I don't know. Sorry. It's fine. The Holy Sword Maiden shook her head. After leaving the training ground, Li Bowen brought Yuan to his guest room. You can stay here for now. They'll contact you when they are finished with the place, which shouldn't take too long. Once Li Bowen left, and he was alone, Yuan sat on the ground and closed his eyes. I might as well use this time to perfect my enhanced sword aura, he thought inwardly before immersing himself in Tianzin's memories. Chapter 2015, Holy Sword Clan 3. Chapter 2015, Holy Sword Clan 3. Unlike his predecessors, Tian Xin was unique in the sense that he was born with all of his previous lives' memories intact. This gave him an unfathomable advantage, allowing him to train with all of his previous knowledge since the day he was born. Because of this, Tian Xin was always considered a prodigy no matter where he went. Moreover, not only was Tian Xin born with all of his memories, but he also came from a renowned background, one that was known for creating many powerful sword masters. One could consider Tian Xin being born with a diamond spoon in his mouth. Yet, despite this, he did not rely on his family, even in the slightest, and left home at a young age to travel the nine heavens. During his journey, Tian Xin quickly gained fame as an undefeated and mysterious warrior, his identity shrouded in mystery beneath the mask he always wore. He encountered Jinxi early in his journey. After being defeated by him, she chose to follow him to get stronger, whether he liked it or not. Although he ignored her in the beginning, they eventually became something akin to master and disciple. Of course, Tian Xin never admitted that he was teaching her, only giving her cryptic advice. It didn't take long for Jinxi to develop feelings for Tian Xin, and in time, he began to feel the same. Yet, neither of them ever voiced their hearts. Though Jinxi's affection often showed in her actions, quite obvious at times, she never found the courage to confess. As for Tian Xin, while he was aware of Jinxi's feelings, he chose to feign ignorance. Together, they honed their swordsmanship. While Jinxi struggled to achieve enhanced sword aura, Tian Xin had long mastered enhanced sword aura and was already looking to reach the next realm, the level of supreme sword aura. As Yuan recalled his experiences as Tian Xin, enhanced sword aura naturally emanated from his body. Since the strength of one's weapon aura stems primarily from comprehension, his enhanced sword aura became sharper and toward perfection at an unfathomable rate. In the blink of an eye, a whole month has passed since Yuan arrived at the Holy Sword Clan. Knock knock. Yuan opened his eyes when someone suddenly knocked on the door. About time, he sighed out loud, assuming Li Bowen had finally arrived to inform him that the training ground was ready. He went to open the door a moment later, only to be surprised that it wasn't Li Bowen who had knocked on the door. How can I help you? Yuan asked the beautiful young woman standing outside his door. This woman had long silver hair and red eyes that glowed faintly. Unexpectedly, it was the Holy Sword Maiden. The Holy Sword Maiden didn't respond right away. Instead, she glanced into his room to confirm he was alone. Then, with a slightly puzzled expression, she said, "I happened to be passing by when I sensed enhanced sword aura coming from this room. I may be mistaken, but was that you?" The Holy Sword Maiden spoke with a tone of disbelief. The enhanced sword aura she had sensed was so powerful, it could only be compared to that of a sword emperor. Yet the man before her was clearly just a mortal. "Yes, it was mine. I was training. Sorry, I didn't realize it was leaking outside. I hope that didn't bother you." "How?" she muttered in a low voice before asking in a loud and clear voice. "How did you achieve that level of enhanced sword aura?" "I have already reached the level of supreme sword aura, but my enhanced sword aura couldn't be compared to it." "Can you also use supreme sword aura?" "No, I can't. That doesn't make any sense. Can you explain how you did it?" "I don't know what to tell you. The strength of one's weapon aura is based on their understanding, so." The Holy Sword Maiden frowned slightly and said, "Are you saying that you, who hasn't even learned supreme sword aura, somehow has a better understanding than I?" "Well, each level of sword aura carries its own depth of understanding," Yuan said. "So it's possible for someone to grasp one level more profoundly than another." "I know that, but it still doesn't make sense. How can a mortal understand more than I, who is at the God Ascension realm?" Yuan didn't know what else to say, but he had a feeling that he'd get into trouble soon. "Come with me," she suddenly said. "I really shouldn't. I was told to stay here by Elderly," Yuan said. "Do you know who I am?" she then asked. He nodded and answered, "You're the Holy Sword Maiden, right?" "That's right, and my authority within the Holy Sword Clan is only second to the Sword Emperor's. Nothing will happen to you if you come with me." "I promise," she said. "Okay," Yuan responded with a stiff smile. It wasn't Li Bowen he was concerned about. However, he couldn't tell her that he was worried about getting involved with her, as that would definitely offend her. Without saying another word, the Holy Sword Maiden turned around and began walking away. Seeing this, Yuan could only sigh inwardly and follow her. They arrived at their destination a few minutes later. Unexpectedly, the Holy Sword Maiden brought him to the building with the metal wall. However, the place was empty. Upon their arrival, the Holy Sword Maiden silently approached the wall, retrieving one of the spirit-grade swords hanging nearby. She then stepped forward, positioning herself before the metal wall. After drawing a steady breath, she activated her enhanced sword aura. In one graceful, fluid motion, she swung the sword, unleashing a streak of shimmering aura that sliced through the air toward the wall. When her enhanced sword aura struck the wall, it carved a 6-inch deep gash into the metal, leaving a clear mark that stood out amid the countless faint scratches left by others. Before Yuan could even say anything, the Holy Sword Maiden tossed her sword at him and said, "Your turn." Chapter 2016, Holy Sword Clan 4. Chapter 2016, Holy Sword Clan 4. Before I strike at the wall, do you mind calling Elderly here?" Yuan asked after catching the spirit-grade sword. "Why? Are you worried that I might do something to you?" The Holy Sword Maiden spoke with a frown. "No, that's not it. I just don't want to do this again later." "Why would you?" The Holy Sword Maiden abruptly halted her sentence when she recalled something that was mentioned before. So it was true. "You're here to qualify for the Holy Sword Temple," she said. Yuan nodded. "That's right. In that case, there's no need to trouble Elderly. I can verify myself." "Go ahead, whenever you're ready," she said, urging him to proceed. "All right." Yuan approached the metal wall, took a deep breath, and fell silent. The next moment, enhanced sword aura surged from his body before enveloping the sword. The Holy Sword Maiden remained silent, but her fists were tightly clenched. From a single glance, she could tell that his enhanced sword aura far surpassed hers. Yet, she couldn't fathom just how vast that difference was. Once he was ready, Yuan flicked his arm with lightning speed. In that instant, the sword in his grasp flickered like a phantom. In the moments that followed, Yuan's enhanced sword aura struck the 6-inch gash left by the Holy Sword Maiden. Not only did it erase her mark entirely, but it even pierced straight through the wall itself, leaving a clean hole in its wake. No way. The Holy Sword Maiden's legs buckled beneath her, and she collapsed on her buttocks with a soft thud, her eyes wide with disbelief. Yuan's enhanced sword aura hadn't merely exceeded her expectations. It likely surpassed even that of the Sword Emperors within the Holy Sword clan. Sorry, but I didn't mean to destroy the wall," Yuan muttered awkwardly, scratching his head. Elderly made it sound indestructible, after all. However, the Holy Sword Maiden was too shocked to even respond, and she merely continued staring at the hole with a dazed face. Seeing her in a daze, Yuan could only wait patiently for her to return to reality. However, his expression subtly shifted when he sensed several powerful presences drawing near. It was likely the Holy Sword King and the others. Even without being told, Yuan understood how terrible the situation appeared. He could already picture himself trying to explain the situation to them, only for things to worsen. Hell, he could even foresee the Holy Sword King picking a fight with him over this. With no other choice, Yuan hastily placed the spirit-grade sword on the ground beside the Holy Sword Maiden, then turned around and exited through the hole had created. Seeing this, the Holy Sword Maiden finally snapped out of her daze. However, Yuan had already left, and before she could give chase, the Holy Sword King and the others entered the building. What the hell happened here? The Holy Sword King exclaimed as his gaze fell upon the gaping hole in the wall. His first instinct was to assume the Holy Sword Maiden was responsible, yet he couldn't fathom why she'd do such a thing. However, before he could ask her anything, the Holy Sword Maiden stood up and ran toward the hole in the wall. "Wait, where are you going?" The Holy Sword King immediately chased after her. With the Holy Sword King close behind, the Holy Sword Maiden rushed after Yuan. However, even with her divine sense enveloping the entire area, she couldn't detect his presence. "Why can't I find him? Don't tell me he already left this place." But there's no way he could have gone that far in such a short time. Of course, Yuan was still within the Holy Sword clan's territory. The reason the Holy Sword Maiden couldn't find him was because he was concealing his presence with Shadow Veil. Sometime later, after giving up on finding Yuan, the Holy Sword Maiden went to find Li Bowen instead, that young man who came to qualify for the Holy Sword Temple. "Who is he?" she questioned him. "Excuse me." Li Bowen wore a dumbfounded look on his face. He couldn't understand why the Holy Sword Maiden was suddenly looking for Yuan, who hadn't left the guest room for over a month. "Just answer my question," she raised her voice, startling him and the Holy Sword King, who had never seen her so agitated before. "Are you looking for that mortal from a month ago?" The Holy Sword King finally recalled. "Why? Did he do something to you?" "I'll find and skin that bastard. Why are you even here? This doesn't concern you." She interrupted him. "But, get out." She pointed toward the exit. Seeing how annoyed she was, the Holy Sword King reluctantly left the room. Once they were alone, the Holy Sword Maiden continued questioning Li Bowen. "Tell me everything you know about that mortal with you a month ago," she demanded. Li Bowen swallowed nervously before responding. "The only thing I know about him is that he's with the Celestial Overlords." "What about his name?" It was at this moment that Li Bowen realized he had never asked Yuan for his name. "I'm sorry, but I never got the chance to ask for his name," he admitted a moment later. "Can you tell me what this is all about?" he then asked. The Holy Sword Maiden rubbed her eyes and sighed before explaining. "He cut through the wall." "What?" Li Bowen raised his eyebrows in a puzzled manner, unable to comprehend her words. "The impenetrable sword wall. He cut through the entire thing with his sword aura?" She repeated, this time with more detail. "He what?" Li Bowen exclaimed, his eyes as wide as saucers. "Now let me go see." Before the Holy Sword Maiden could respond, Li Bowen rushed to the training ground. The moment Li Bowen laid eyes on the gaping hole in the wall, his jaw nearly hit the ground in disbelief. After all, the only time had witnessed such devastation was from Supreme Sword Aura, Yet Yuan couldn't possibly know it if he was seeking training at the Holy Sword Temple. When the Holy Sword Maiden caught up, he asked her, how did he achieve this? With enhanced sword aura, she responded, confirming his suspicions. Unsure of how to respond, Li Bowen quietly stood there, staring at the hole with a dazed face. Chapter 2017, Holy Sword Clan 5. Chapter 2017, Holy Sword Clan 5. Hey. The Holy Sword Maiden suddenly called out, snapping Li Bowen out of his daze. When he turned to look at her, she held a sword-shaped badge in front of her, seemingly offering it to him. This badge looked similar to the one in Yuan's possession, but it was golden in color and had more refined details. Li Bowen's eyes widened at the sight of this badge, but before he could say anything, the Holy Sword Maiden spoke. The mortal left before I could give this to him. If he returns, give it to him for me. I promise to verify his qualifications. After all, the sword badge was akin to a referral, but it came from none other than the Holy Sword Maiden, which guaranteed Yuan's admission to the Holy Sword Temple. Yes, Li Bowen accepted the badge with stiff movements. Even someone of his stature had never touched this object before. Wait, did you say Head left? Li Bowen suddenly asked. Yes, he left after destroying the wall. You probably thought Head get in trouble or something. I don't know why, but I have a feeling that he's afraid of me. I see, Li Bowen remarked in a flat voice. He couldn't tell her that it was most likely due to what he told Yuan a month ago. Anyway, he'll be leaving now. If you ever find more about that mortal, let me know. We need him in the Holy Sword Clan, said the Holy Sword Maiden. But he's already with the Celestial Overlords, Li Bowen reminded her. So what? As far as I am aware, the Celestial Overlords don't restrict their members to a single faction. And since there are no grievances between our faction, there's no reason he cannot join us as well. Most factions out there allow their members to join multiple factions to keep their numbers up, so it wasn't uncommon for someone to belong to multiple factions. Li Bowen could only silently nod his head. He recalled Yuan being at the lowest rank for the Celestial Overlords, so there was a good chance they could recruit him into the Holy Sword Clan. Sometime later, the Holy Sword Maiden left the Holy Sword Clan. The Holy Sword King and the others were puzzled by her abrupt departure, but they still left with her. Fuck, what am I supposed to do with this badge? If he doesn't return? Li Bowen muttered as he stared at the golden badge resting on his palm. However, he suddenly sensed a presence appear behind him like a ghost. When he turned around and saw Yuan standing behind him, Li Bowen nearly had a heart attack. Son of a bye. Sorry for startling you. I thought you had left. No, I only hid my presence since I didn't want to deal with the Holy Sword Maiden after what happened. I'm glad she left so quickly, said Yuan. Li Bowen rubbed his eyes and released a stressful sigh. I told you to stay away from them, but you went ahead and caused such a scene. Yuan shrugged. Don't make it sound like it was my fault that she dragged me out of my room and forced me to do her bidding. If I had refused, it would have definitely offended her. I'm not blaming you, Li Bowen said, admitting that it wasn't his fault. In fact, I am quite thankful for what you did. Like you said, things could have turned out much worse, but it didn't. Hell, the Holy Sword Maiden even approved of you. Li Bowen extended his hand toward Yuan, showing the golden badge, and continued, She has granted you permission to enter the Holy Sword Temple. Thank you. Yuan accepted the badge. Then he asked about the wall. How much will the repairs cost? He'll pay for it. ITLL cost a few 100 million spirit stones, but you don't need to worry about it. It's pretty worn out, and we've been wanting to replace it, but we got lazy. If you say so. Anyway, when do you want to head to the Holy Sword Temple? Can we go there now? Unfortunately, ITLL takes some time to prepare the transport, so the earliest you can go is 3 months. Then I'll leave as soon as possible. I understand. Oh, one more thing. How would you like to join the Holy Sword Temple? This isn't just my request, but also the Holy Sword Maidens. But I'm already part of the Celestial Overlords. The Celestial Overlords doesn't prevent its members from joining other factions. In fact, several of our members are also members of the Celestial Overlords. There's no downside to having more backers, either. Li Bowen's words made sense to Yuan. It was common for people to join multiple factions to expand their influence. After all, having the support of several powerful backers was always advantageous. However, Yuan didn't want to just join any faction. Can you give me some time to think about it? I would like to learn more about the Holy Sword clan before I decide, he said. Li Bowen's face immediately lit up with excitement. Of course, though there's not much to see here, since we're just a small branch location, we'll try my best to answer any questions that you may have. Sometime later, Li Bowen left to get the transportation ready. In the meantime, Yuan wandered their territory. However, just as Li Bowen had warned, there wasn't much to see, much less learn there. However, he did find a library that contained the history of the Holy Sword clan, and with nothing else better to do, he started reading it. After reading several scrolls, Yuan learned some peculiar information about the Holy Sword Temple. According to the Holy Sword clan, they weren't the first owners of the Holy Sword Temple, and they'd merely acquired it from its creator, the Exalted Blacksmith. However, Yuan couldn't recall creating it. Of course, he still lacked some of Tian Shiyuan's memories, mostly of his time after becoming the god of creation. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc. Chapter 2018, Entering the Starry Sky. Chapter 2018, Entering the Starry Sky. After spending a few days in the library, Yuan went back to his room, where he tried to learn Supreme Sword Aura. Despite having the understanding, memories, and experience of using Supreme Sword Aura as Tian Xan, Yuan couldn't use it for some reason, almost as if his attempt was being blocked by an unseen force. After failing several times, Yuan stopped trying and began focusing on his soul strength instead. Since there was no limit to how strong his soul strength could get, it was his current priority. Time passed, and in the blink of an eye, 3 months had passed since Yuan received permission to visit the Holy Sword Temple. Once the preparations were complete, Li Bowen notified Yuan and brought him outside, where a golden carriage awaited. Naturally, this was no ordinary carriage. It was a flying treasure crafted by the Holy Sword clan, reserved for journeys to the Holy Sword Temple. The carriage will take you to the Holy Sword Temple, which will take 2 months. Also, just in case you didn't know, you still have to pass a trial to enter the Holy Sword Temple. Right now, you only have permission to visit the place and partake in the trial, Li Bowen said. Yuan nodded. I am aware. All right, whenever you're ready. Li Bowen opened the door and gestured for him to enter. The moment Yuan stepped into the carriage, he found himself in a surprisingly spacious room, as though he had entered another world. High-grade flying treasures like the golden carriage were crafted with spatial techniques, allowing their interiors to be far larger than their outward appearance suggested. Good luck at the Holy Sword Temple, Li Bowen said before closing the door. The golden carriage departed soon after, ascending swiftly into the skies before piercing through the clouds and vanishing into the boundless void in the blink of an eye. Inside the room, Yuan approached the window and gazed outside. Beyond the glass stretched a vast expanse of darkness, illuminated by countless flickering stars of varying sizes. Lan Yingying emerged from Yuan's dantian to look at the starry sky, since this was her first time traveling beyond the 9 heavens. So, this is what the starry sky looks like up close. Lan Yingying muttered with a look of awe on her face. Liuxiang and the others also appeared. I find it rather dull, Liuxiang remarked. The place is mostly empty, and when you do find something, it's usually just useless rocks. That said, the starry sky holds some of the rarest and most precious treasures in the 9 heavens, so there's still reason to explore it. How does one explore the starry sky? Lan Yingying asked. Well, there are treasures out there that help you find other treasures. However, they're extremely rare and expensive. Other than that, I guess you'll just have to rely on your luck and wander the place until you find something. What if you get lost? It's hard to explain, But once you reach a certain cultivation, it's almost impossible to get lost even in the starry sky. You will instinctively know where you are and where to go. Of course, people still take precautions and have teleporting treasures just in case. Nobody is foolish enough to enter the starry sky without life-saving treasures, either. Life-saving treasures? Is the starry sky that dangerous? Wan Yingying asked. Of course. With no rules in the starry sky and distances too vast to call for help, you can only rely on yourself, Liuxiang said. So what happens if we encounter someone? Well, since we're in a flying treasure and won't be venturing too far away from the nine heavens, even if we do encounter someone, it is very unlikely that anything will happen. We're also in the Holy Sword clan's signature carriage. I doubt anyone would be foolish enough to attack us. Yuan smiled and said, You'd be surprised at how many bold individuals are out there. Even if someone attacks us, we'll be fine since you're here, young master. Liuxiang chuckled. However, Yuan shook his head and said, As long as they're not in the God Ascension realm, we'll be able to handle them. But you've already defeated several God Ascension realm cultivators, she said. No, I only destroyed their physical bodies, Yuan replied. Besides, God Ascension realm cultivators have restricted power within the nine heavens, just as the lower heavens impose their own cultivation limits. However, that restriction will be lifted once they leave the nine heavens. Really? I didn't know that God Ascension realm cultivators have their strength restricted in the nine heavens, Lan Yingying said with a surprised look on her face. God Ascension realm cultivators possess the strength to shatter stars with a mere clench of their fists. If they were free to wield such power within the nine heavens, that world would have long since ceased to exist. I can only fight God Ascension realm cultivators in the nine heavens. Once we leave, even I am powerless against them until I learn celestial qi, said Yuan. Is that so? Lan Yingying continued asking questions, her curiosity about the starry sky growing with each passing moment as she gazed out the window. It was as if she were instinctively drawn to it, like a moth to a flame. Time passed swiftly, and before they knew it, nearly 2 months had gone by. Hey, I think I see something. Lan Yingying, who had spent most of her time gazing at the void, suddenly said, What do you see? Liuxiang asked as she sipped on her tea at the couch. Lan Yingying narrowed her eyes and murmured uncertainly, I think it's some kind of serpent, a white serpent. What? Liuxiang raised her eyebrows. And I think it's consuming stars. What? The moment Yuan heard this detail, he stopped cultivating at once and sprang to his feet, rushing to the window. And sure enough, when he looked outside, he saw a tiny, serpent-like entity drifting through the void. Wherever it passed, the flickering stars vanished, almost as if they were being devoured. It can't be, Yuan murmured in disbelief. Chapter 2019, White Serpent in the Starry Sky. Chapter 2019. White Serpent in the Starry Sky. Yuan could scarcely believe his eyes as he watched the white serpent drift through the starry sky, devouring stars in its wake. Xingrue. Yuan muttered this name. It was likely that this entity was the Eater of Stars, one of the 9 Divine Supreme, who had vanished since the Immortal Monarch's era. The evidence wasn't conclusive, but in Yuan's eyes, there was no doubt. After all, how many white serpents that could devour stars were out there? Xingrue, isn't that one of the 9 Divine Supreme? Liuxiang remarked when she heard this name. Yuan nodded, yes. According to Yayo, she returned to the starry sky to consume stars after the Immortal Monarch's death. Liuxiang set down her tea and walked to the window for a look herself, but by the time she arrived, the white serpent had already drifted so far into the void that it looked no more than a speck of white dust. She's so far away, Liuxiang murmured. Hearing this, Yuan clenched his fists in frustration. Though they were fortunate to have glimpsed the Eater of Stars, that fortune was bittersweet, as there was no realistic way for them to pursue her. The flying treasure was on autopilot, and even if Yuan could redirect its course to pursue Xingrui, their chances of catching up were non-existent. After all, Xingrui was a colossal beast capable of devouring multiple stars in a single bite. For her to appear as nothing more than a speck of dust, she had to be light years away. Without the proper flying treasure and sufficient time, it was impossible to catch Xingrui. It'd be impossible to pursue Xingrui even if I were a God Ascension realm cultivator right now. If I really want to catch up to her, I'll need to master the power of the void, at least to the point where I can teleport vast distances. Just wait a little longer, Xingrui. They'll find you again, soon. Yuan swore inwardly as he stood by the window, silently watching the tiny white speck fade into the depths of the void. For the rest of their journey to the Holy Sword Temple, Yuan found himself reminiscing about his time with Xingrui. In the beginning, she had reminded him of Yingzi, aloof, curious, and utterly lacking in common sense. But as time passed, she grew more composed, and her loyalty to him deepened to unfathomable depths. Eventually, Yuan, we've arrived at the Holy Sword Temple, Lan Yingying said, pointing ahead at a massive floating island. At its center stood a towering, majestic structure that resembled a grand temple. The Holy Sword Temple radiated a brilliant golden light, piercing through the surrounding darkness like a divine treasure suspended in the void. The golden carriage descended onto the island, landing right in front of the temple gates. Lan Yingying and the others returned to Yuan's dantian before he left the carriage. Greetings. A middle-aged woman wearing golden robes greeted Yuan when he exited the carriage. Hello, I am the 6th Holy Sword of the Holy Sword Temple, but you may address me as the 6th Elder. Can I see your referral? Yuan nodded and retrieved not just the crimson badge he received from Su Jiechi, but also the golden badge from the Holy Sword Maiden, handing it to the 6th Elder. This is... The 6th Elder's eyes widened with surprise when she saw the golden badge. So you've received the Holy Sword Maiden's approval. I believe this is her first time handing out her badge to someone, revealed the 6th Elder. Is that so? I feel honored. The 6th Elder nodded and said, just so you know, even with the Holy Sword Maiden's approval, you must pass a trial before you can enter the Holy Sword Temple. I am aware. What kind of trial is it? The 6th Elder turned to face a specific direction, where a colossal sword hovered silently above a circular platform, resembling that of an execution site. To enter the Holy Sword Temple, you must survive the Blade of Tribulation, a celestial-grade treasure imbued with enhanced sword chi and a hint of supreme sword aura, with nothing but your own sword chi. Even if you somehow manage to survive, it still counts as a fail if you allow the Blade of Tribulation to injure your body, explained the 6th Elder. In other words, using nothing but my sword aura, I have to emerge unscathed, said Yuan. That is correct. This meant that Yuan couldn't exploit the trial with his regeneration abilities and had to rely solely on his enhanced sword aura. I'm curious, how many people die in this trial? Yuan asked. A cold smile tugged at the corners of the 6th Elder's lips as she said, the Holy Sword Temple receives thousands of challengers each year, yet only 5% manage to pass its trial. In other words, for 95%, it becomes a graveyard. That said, only those who have yet to enter the God Ascension realm perish, since they cannot live without a physical body. If I survive, but fail the trial, can I try it again? Yuan then asked. Of course, but you'll have to wait 10 years before trying again, she said. All right, let's get this over with. Yuan said as he approached the platform. Are you sure? Everyone is given a month to prepare. She stopped him. He nodded. I'm sure. If you say so. The moment Yuan stepped onto the platform, an overwhelming pressure crashed down upon him, and that was merely the natural aura of the Blade of Tribulation. Yuan raised his head to gaze at the blade, a mysterious smile forming on his lips. The Holy Sword clan likely wouldn't believe him even if he told them, but this wasn't his first time seeing the Blade of Tribulation. After all, he was the one who forged it when he was the exalted blacksmith. In fact, the Blade of Tribulation was crafted during the God of Creation ceremony. Chapter 2020, Holy Sword Temple. Chapter 2020, Holy Sword Temple. Whenever you're ready to begin the trial, activate your sword aura and use it to protect your body, said the sixth elder after Yuan stepped onto the platform. The Blade of Tribulation won't attack unless it senses your sword aura. Yuan silently nodded in acknowledgement and took a moment to prepare himself. Then, without hesitation, he unleashed as much enhanced sword aura as he could muster. The sixth elder's eyes widened with awe when she sensed Yuan's enhanced sword aura. No wonder she gave him her sword badge. The sixth elder finally understood what caused the Holy Sword Maiden to approve of him. In response to Yuan's sword aura, the Blade of Tribulation began to tremble. Then, within moments, it unleashed its own enhanced sword aura. And then, as if heralding an execution, the blade descended from the sky, hurling itself toward Yuan with terrifying speed. Since the trial required him to endure the attack using only his enhanced sword aura, Yuan concentrated solely on that. He remained motionless, calmly awaiting the blade's descent. Half a second later, the blade reached Yuan, colliding with his enhanced sword aura. Despite its powerful descent, the Blade of Tribulation came to an abrupt halt the moment its tip touched his aura, frozen in midair. But it didn't end there, and the Blade of Tribulation suddenly surged with an even greater wave of enhanced sword aura, this time laced with a faint trace of supreme sword aura. Yet Yuan remained firm, his enhanced sword aura unwavering. How long do I have to resist this sword? Yuan turned to look at the sixth elder. When the Blade of Tribulation stops its attack, she responded. Even without waiting for the end results, the sixth elder could tell that Yuan was going to pass the trial with ease the moment she sensed his sword aura. His enhanced sword aura was the most powerful Shed ever seen, and Shed met a lot of sword masters, including sword emperors. Sure enough, exactly 30 seconds after its descent, the Blade of Tribulation withdrew its enhanced sword aura and silently returned to its place in the sky. Congratulations on passing the trial, said the sixth elder. You are the first mortal in history to have ever succeeded. Not that there were any mortals before you who had attempted it. Yuan calmly walked off the platform and said, So, when can I enter the Holy Sword Temple? Only one person is allowed inside the Holy Sword Temple at a time, and someone is currently training inside, she explained. There's also a wait list, and she stopped there and retrieved a jade slip to look at the contents inside before continuing. You are currently 149th on the list. Yuan's jaw dropped after hearing this. He was never told about a wait list, which could take years if not longer. Noticing his expression, the sixth elder explained, There's no strict time limit, but once you step outside, your training is considered complete. Also, there's no opportunity to rest once you're inside, so most cultivators only remain in the temple for a few years at a time before coming out to recuperate. That's too long. I don't have the time to wait for my turn. Is there nothing that can be done? Unfortunately, that's just how the Holy Sword Temple was set up. There's nothing we, the Holy Sword Clan, can do about it, either. However, there's one way to move up the wait list. How? Yuan instantly inquired. You can try swapping places with the next person on the wait list. It has happened before, but it's extremely rare and often involves some sort of payment. Yuan rubbed his eyes and muttered, What a pain in the ass. Since most cultivators who trained at the Holy Sword Temple were immortals, waiting a few hundred years to enter one of the 9 heavens' most effective training grounds was a small price to pay. But Yuan didn't have that kind of time. The sixth elder then continued, It just so happens that the person who is supposed to go next is already at the Holy Sword Temple. We can talk to them about a potential position swap, and if you want to increase your chances of even having a negotiation, you should make an offer. Who is this individual? Knowing a bit more about them would help me prepare a suitable offer, Yuan said. This person is the sect leader of the Sword Descending Pavilion. Unfortunately, I can't tell you what he wants since we don't like prying. In that case, can you see if they're willing to negotiate? We can do that. Give me a few minutes. The sixth elder flew away the next moment. While she was away, Yuan pondered what he should do if the negotiations failed. If this sect leader even wanted to negotiate at all. I really don't want to leave empty-handed after spending so much time and effort getting here. But there's really nothing I can do if I have to wait for my turn. It's not like I can force my way inside, either, he sighed out loud. The sixth elder returned about 15 minutes later, and before Yuan could even ask her about the negotiation, she silently shook her head. I see. Yuan sighed. Was there truly nothing he could do but wait for his turn? After another sigh, Yuan spoke. Do you think I could take a look at the Holy Sword Temple before I leave? The sixth elder nodded. If it's just looking around, there's no harm in that. Follow me. Yuan followed the sixth elder to the Holy Sword Temple, which was only a few minutes away. Once he was standing before the majestic Holy Sword Temple, a sudden wave of nostalgia surged within Yuan. It's a pity, but it seems like I am not fated to train here today. A few moments later, Yuan turned around and began walking away. Rumble, however, before he could take even 2 steps, the ground began to tremble, prompting Yuan to turn around, just in time to see the doors of the Holy Sword Temple slowly begin to open. Chapter 2021 Holy Sword Temple 2 Chapter 2021 Holy Sword Temple 2 The door is opening. The sixth elder mumbled. However, she didn't think it had anything to do with Yuan and figured it was just a coincidence that the person inside was finished with their training. In the very next moment, the sixth elder watched as someone emerged from the Holy Sword Temple. No, they were launched out as if forcefully ejected. What the? The sixth elder followed the figure flying through the air with wide eyes. Fuck! The individual shouted as they steadied themselves after being thrown from the Holy Sword Temple. Once Yuan got a clear look at her, he saw an extraordinarily beautiful woman with shimmering silver hair and radiant jade-green eyes. Then, she exclaimed in a loud voice, "What the fuck was that about?" Senior. The sixth elder didn't understand where the woman's anger came from. It was not uncommon for people to exit the Holy Sword Temple in ridiculous fashions, and she had seen it many times. That doesn't count, the woman suddenly said. Excuse me. I said that doesn't count. I was forcefully ejected from the Holy Sword Temple, so I didn't come out on my own free will. I'm going back inside. Wait. Even if you're the Sword Empress, you cannot. Shut up. I just told you that I was forcefully removed, said the woman, who turned out to be a Sword Emperor. A Sword Empress since she was female. Even after one learns Supreme Sword Aura and becomes a Sword Emperor, the Holy Sword Temple remains an excellent training ground to further improve their Supreme Sword Aura, hence why Sword Emperors continue to return to the place even after they achieve their title. But that's not possible. The Holy Sword Temple doesn't even have such a function. We've been managing the Holy Sword Temple for several years now, but the only people it has ejected are those who have become corpses. You should know that since you're also part of our Holy Sword clan, the sixth elder exclaimed. Surprisingly, the silver-haired also belonged to the Holy Sword Temple. She's one of the 3 Sword Emperors in the Holy Sword clan? Yuan thought to himself as he watched the situation unfold. I know, but I'm telling you that's what happened. Why would I lie about this? It's not like this is my first time entering the temple, said the Sword Empress. The sixth elder was left speechless, but she couldn't imagine the Sword Empress lying about such a thing either. Unfortunately, regardless of the circumstances, once you leave the Holy Sword Temple, you're not allowed to enter again until your next turn, she said a moment later. Son of a bitch. The Sword Empress cursed again. I was so close to reaching the next level of Supreme Sword Aura, too. The Sword Empress suddenly snapped her head at Yuan and shouted, What the fuck are you looking at, huh? Senior, let's not take your anger out on a junior. Your reputation is already in the gutters because of your foul mouth, the sixth elder said as she shook her head. That's bullshit. He was staring at me so intensely, so I told him off. Yuan couldn't deny that he had been staring at her, though it was because of her potty mouth that was so out of place for someone of her stature and graceful appearance. I apologize. I didn't mean to stare. Yuan apologized. The Sword Empress suddenly narrowed her eyes and asked, You? Have we met before? No, I don't think so. What's your name? Yuan. The Sword Empress fell silent, seemingly in deep thought. Whatever, she said a moment later. We'll go get the next person on the wait list. Please don't do anything rash while I am away, said the sixth elder. What? You think I'm going to sneak back inside while you leave? You're mocking me. I didn't say that. The sixth elder said before leaving. Instead of leaving, the Sword Empress decided to stay around. Of course, she didn't have any intention of sneaking inside the Holy Sword Temple. Hey, the Sword Empress called out Yuan again. What is it? You're quite calm despite being in the presence of a Sword Empress, even though you're just a mortal. What are you even doing here? I was going to enter the temple to train, but I don't have the time to wait for my turn. You? Enter the Holy Sword Temple? There's no way. Don't lie to me. The Sword Empress immediately doubted him, since she couldn't fathom a mortal passing the blade of tribulation trial. Why would I lie? Yuan showed her the golden badge given to him by the Holy Sword Maiden. Her eyes widened with surprise after seeing the badge, and she muttered, No way. She fell silent again, but she was staring at him with a piercing gaze. Are you sure we haven't met before? I can't shake this feeling that we have, she said. Yuan looked at her face and quickly dug through his memories. Sorry, but I really don't think we've met before, he responded a moment later. The Sword Empress remained silent, but she continued inspecting his appearance from head to toe. The sixth elder returned a few minutes later with a handsome middle-aged man following behind. Sword Empress Huang, it's an honor to meet you today. The sect leader of the Sword Descending Pavilion greeted her the moment he saw her. The Sword Empress merely nodded in acknowledgement. The sect leader glanced at Yuan, but quickly ignored him after seeing that he was immortal. You can enter the Holy Sword Temple whenever you're ready, the sixth elder said to the sect leader a moment later. The sect leader nodded before approaching the massive entrance, quickly disappearing into the temple. But not even 2 seconds later, the sect leader could be seen flying out of the temple, just as the Sword Empress had been ejected minutes earlier. The sixth elder and the Sword Empress' eyes widened with disbelief after seeing this. What? They both muttered in a daze, unable to comprehend the situation. Chapter 2022, Holy Sword Temple, 3. Chapter 2022, Holy Sword Temple, 3. What the hell was that? The sect leader exclaimed with a confused face after stabilizing himself. What just happened? The sixth elder asked, even though she already had an idea of what he was going to say. I don't know. After I entered the temple, I felt a powerful force pulling me back before I even made it to the other side. The next thing I knew, I was outside again, said the sect leader, disbelief etched across his face. So, exactly what happened to me. But in my case, I was in the middle of training, said the Sword Empress. Hey, that doesn't count, right? I clearly didn't even begin my training. The sect leader turned to look at the sixth elder, who wore a perplexed expression on her face. Since this was the first time anything like this had happened at the Holy Sword Temple, she wasn't sure how to deal with it. However, considering the situation, it wouldn't be fair for the sect leader, who clearly didn't get any training done, if they didn't allow him to try again. Since this is an unprecedented event, and it's clear that you didn't enter the temple properly, it'll allow you to enter again. The sixth elder eventually decided to do the unprecedented and allow someone to enter the temple again after they left. The sect leader thanked her before walking toward the entrance again. However, the Sword Empress stopped him and said, Wait a moment. When the sect leader stopped and looked at her with a questioning gaze, she continued, You have already been rejected by the Holy Sword Temple once. If you try to enter again, there's a chance that it might hurt you instead of just ejecting you. The sect leader's body trembled slightly at this possibility. Now that I think about this, she's right. The sixth elder agreed. This is a highly unusual and unprecedented issue. If you attempt to enter again, we cannot guarantee your safety. While countless people have died while training inside the Holy Sword Temple, this was a different situation. The sect leader swallowed nervously. He wouldn't have any regrets if he died while training inside the Holy Sword Temple, but he'd never be able to die peacefully if he died trying to enter the Holy Sword Temple. Then what should I do? The sect leader asked for their opinion, even though he already knew the answer. You can either try to enter again, or just leave it as it is, said the Sword Empress. The sect leader gritted his teeth in frustration. Had waited hundreds of years for this moment, even leaving his sect for a prolonged period of time just to prepare for the Holy Sword Temple. Yet, after all that preparation, does he have to leave empty-handed? He couldn't accept this result. He started at the open entrance, which was now emitting an ominous aura with a serious, pondering face. Eventually, he walked forward and said, "They'll take the risk." The sixth elder and the Sword Empress didn't say anything since they had no authority in his decision, and they'd already warned him of the potential danger. They all watched as the sect leader disappeared into the Holy Sword Temple. Time seemed to slow as everyone waited, tense and uncertain, to see if the sect leader would be ejected from the Holy Sword Temple once more. Seconds passed, but nothing happened. Did he manage to get inside? The sixth elder questioned out loud. Looks like, before the Sword Empress could even finish her sentence, something came out of the Holy Sword Temple. However, it wasn't the sect leader, but a glowing orb of light. Holy fuck! The Sword Empress subconsciously cursed when she saw this. The sect leader had been ejected once more, but this time, it was only his soul. His physical body was nowhere to be seen. This could mean only one of two things. Either his body had been destroyed, or he had been forcefully stripped from it as punishment for defying the Holy Sword Temple's warning. "And my physical body," the sect leader exclaimed in shock after realizing he had emerged from the Holy Sword Temple as just his soul. "Sixth elder, this is unacceptable. How are you going to compensate me for this?" The sect leader's angry voice rippled throughout the place. Although they had warned him of the risks of entering again, and the Holy Sword Temple's malfunction wasn't directly their fault, others might not see it that way. After all, the Holy Sword clan owned and managed the temple, and if anything went wrong, they would be held accountable. The Sword Empress stepped forward and said, "Listen here, you little bastard. I warned you loud and fucking clear that something like this would happen, but you went ahead and risked it. You're lucky to have escaped with your life." The sect leader wanted to say something, but was immediately interrupted by the Sword Empress. "However, it's true that the Holy Sword Temple is malfunctioning, and while we currently have no idea why, we'll compensate you for the trouble. We'll pay for the resources for your new physical body and some more, and we'll also allow you to enter the Holy Sword Temple without needing to wait once we figure out and fix the issue. Of course, that is if you want to come back here in the future. If you're not satisfied with the compensation, we can continue this at a later date in a more formal setting." The sect leader remained silent for a moment before responding. "This isn't over. I'll contact the Holy Sword clan again after I deal with my physical body." After saying that, the sect leader flew away, disappearing into the starry sky. "Fuck, what a pain in the ass." The Sword Empress cursed out loud after he left, rubbing her eyes in a stressed manner. "This is indeed quite troublesome. How are we supposed to fix a problem we don't even understand?" The sixth elder sighed. "You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.